Hello and welcome to episode 101 of Random Encounter, the RPG fan podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Y'all are going to have to bear with me a little bit here. I'm getting over being sick, so I might be coughing randomly at
You
points.
say that constantly, though. You
I,
say that like every other episode. You're gonna have to bear with me because I'm getting over being
well,
sick.
I work in a
Rob,
petri dish. I
are you
work in
getting old,
a petri
Rob?
dish. I am getting old. I'm going to be 31 in a month, so screw you.
Wow,
What's
Uh,
so
the
Oh,
old.
such old. Such decrepit.
Caitlin, are you older than me?
No,
I think you guys are
I'm.
almost the same age.
Yeah, we're both 30.
Okay. That's Caitlin Argyros, everybody.
Link is on the boards. Hi, guys.
Not
Do-
pronounced heroes, which are delicious.
Ay.
Well, if you were pronouncing it like actually in Greek, it probably would be. I don't know.
Is it Greek?
It is Greek, yes.
Oh, crap! So you
I'm.
could have heroes.
Yes.
You could have a delicious last name.
Oh my
I mean,
god.
it already is. But
Well, actually, it means silver, but yeah.
Well, then,
you're
then it's
gold in my book.
a glimmery last name. Oh, yeah.
So we also have Steven I'm in Japan Myrink.
I am... I am indeed in Japan.
And I think all of the internet heard you when it came to a little Smash Brothers announcement that we're going to talk about later.
To be honest, I could have announced anything and I would have been excited. But
yeah,
this
it was just this ringing sensation in my ears that drove me a little nuts. And then we also have Derek. I was right about Danganronpa Heemsbergen.
Oh, I was?
Yeah, I'm enjoying
What
it.
way? Oh, okay.
We're going to talk about that a little bit.
That you would like it. Gotcha. Hi, Embryon on the
We'll
boards.
talk about. We got lots to talk about today, guys. So, I think we got to start out with the big release of last week, and I got a chance
Tomb
to.
Raider.
I actually want to play that new Tomb
Me
Raider.
too. I want to play it
Looks
so
quite
bad.
I do too, yeah. I want it to be on not Xbox so I can play it. Not that I have anything against the Xbox, I just don't have one.
Well, that PC version comes out soon, but that's not the game we're gonna.
Does it?
I think in like February or something.
That's not soon.
Quote
Come on,
unquote
man.
soon.
That's
Soon, it means I want it now.
please
Come
look
on,
forward to it.
man.
Please look forward to it.
Soon.
I
We
think
just missed that claim.
Who wants to bet I like it more than Uncharted 4? So I like the new Tomb Raider a lot. So the game that we're going to talk about a little bit is Fallout 4. I got to review it for the site, so I had it about a week and a half before it came out. Lots and lots of time to play it, lots and lots of time to neglect my wife and play a lot of Fallout. But I actually don't want to start the discussion. I kind of want to let Caitlin and Steven. Derek, I don't think you've been playing Fallout at all?
I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay. I want to give Caitlin and Steven kind of a chance to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to jump in there because I don't want this to be the Rob show again. So, what are you guys thinking about Fallout 4 so far? Caitlin, get us started on your journey through the wasteland. Not
How is the dog? Tell me about the dog.
I'm going to talk about the dog because
Dog is so cute.
the dog is
He's a
so
good,
cute.
he's a good boy.
The
Yes,
dog.
he's such a good boy.
No, but here's the
Confirmed
problem.
good boy.
Is when the dog gets hurt and he's whimpering and like writhing on the ground, and I'm like, no, I can't. No, I'm not looking at that. And I sent him back to my home base and was like, you just stay here, boy. You,
I am
please.
just so relieved that he can't die.
I know
Because
that
I played Fallout 3 worried to death that every single encounter he was going to bite. I was like saving before every major encounter because I was afraid he was going to eat it and I would be up without my dog for the rest of the game. So
he's also
Bethesda-
very weak. He was
Bethesda
very.
actually made a really good point about the dog because people were mad that he can't die in 4. And they were like, yeah, but we looked at the stats. All of you just restarted every time the dog died. So why not just
Yeah.
cut that out? Like, nobody let him die.
Oh, it's my Fire Emblem argument, which is don't play the game with permadeath if you're just going to keep restarting it.
Yeah,
No, so,
but I mean, like, who cares about people? We're talking about a dog.
Okay,
here.
that's true. That is.
cute, lovable dog named Dog Meat. Yes.
I would say I think the best part about Fallout 4 so far is that the robot calls me Burt Macklin FBI.
Wait, really?
That's one of his names, yeah.
The implementation is just as bad as I thought it would be. Like, he never says it in a sentence. He's like, Burt Macklin!
You guys remember when they?
Hey, sir, how are you doing?
You guys remember when Bethesda? This is kind of again, I think kind of the point that I'm making with Fallout 4, but I don't want to go there immediately. But Bethesda made this real big point about how we have thousands of different names that you can be called over the course of the game. I have only heard my name one time in this game at the very beginning when I met Codsworth after the bombs had fallen.
Well,
And he was
only
like,
Codsworth says it.
right, but
Yeah.
again, they made this huge giant deal out of it, and it came up one time.
Well,
Like,
did you not party with Codsworth? Because, I mean, if you
Yeah.
party with Codsworth, you'll hear it more.
He's my companion right now, and he calls me by my name all the time.
Well, he's not
Cod-
my companion.
You know why he's great? Is
Well,
runs around screaming violent obscenities in like a really British affectation. He's like,
yes!
I shall gut this bean for you.
And he complains about dust and uncleanliness all over the place. You just know he just wants to clean up the entire wasteland.
It's like a twisted, terrifying version of Rosie from the Jetsons. Like, he's like, Rosie was,
Yes!
oh, dirty, dirty. We're going to kill this one.
If Rosie were British and had like a blade saw for a hand and a flamethrower for another hand. Yes.
Morning, sir.
No, so
Get later that I have not personally seen. I'm not going to spoil it. But my roommate was telling me about it, and it's the clear best companion in the game. And I guess, Rob, you probably know about the companion, but I don't want to spoil it. But it's awesome.
There's a couple really cool moments with the companions. I like how you can have relationships with them. Apparently, you can just engage in a polyamorous relationship in this game, which is kind of
Jim Sterling.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Jim pointed that one out, and he was 100% right. But I kind of ran into the same problems I've always run into with Bethesda games with the companions, where they were constantly getting in my way. They were spending more time on their ass instead of helping me out. And then there's also a couple of perks. There's a couple
Is that not helping you out?
Well, sometimes it is. But then there's a couple perks that make you stronger and able to carry more if you just are a lone character without a companion, and I picked those up and never looked back. And I also personally like the isolation of the game. Like, I think that's one thing that Fallout 4 still really knocks out of the park, is that creepy sense of isolation and going into these places that after, a nuclear holocaust, you're going into these moments of Americana. Like, that's the part of Fallout that still really, really works, is when you're going into these different areas. Most of the environments have been completely designed from scratch, so you're not walking into an endless stream of office buildings like in Fallout 3. Those moments are still really good, but I was still like constantly having my companion character getting in my way. Have fun the first time you need to get into an elevator and your companion character just, stands in front of you, or they disappear in order to make sure that they get up on top with you. That's kind of my running theme with this game, is that the Bethesda stuff is still there, and that goes for the good and the bad. The good immersive gameplay is still there, but the jank, the moments of just like, why are you doing it like this, are still there too. And I think that's why I'm a little frustrated with this game, is I'm like, okay, Bethesda, I've played Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3, and now Fallout 4. You've taken some baby steps here and there, but then I feel like you've also taken some steps backwards from Skyrim.
I mean, okay, so Steven and I, we obviously are still in the early parts of the game. You play a lot more. Maybe as we progress, we'll run into more of these issues and kind of turn around. As for me personally, right now, I'm having a blast with it. I haven't played a Fallout game in a while. I mean, the last one I played was Fallout 3 a long time ago, so this is kind of a nice return to the Wasteland for me. And I don't know, I had a really fun time with the character creator and the opening story with my character. Helped a little bit by the sort of set backstory that they create for the male and female characters, which was really cool.
I like that as well. I like that they're different characters. Like,
Yeah.
I can play either of them.
I like that, but I miss the opening. I still think Fallout 3's opening was way more effective. I think that Fallout 4 kind of stumbles trying to get to a very quick opening to kind of get you into the wasteland faster. I
actually agree.
I think Fallout 3's opening is way, way slower, but it also creates that sense of place a lot better than Fallout 4. And Fallout 4 also shows you one of its ugliest characters, the Vault-Tec salesman. Like, one of their worst character designs is one of the first things that you see, of just like...
His lip syncing is horrific.
Oh my god, his like triangle lips.
Yeah.
Everybody has like Mr. Ed horse teeth in this game, like over and over again, where they're just giving you this massive overbite.
I've had various degrees of agreement to this comment, but I actually feel like it's very, very video gamey in the beginning, and very like Bethesda going, well, everybody already knows what Fallout is, so we're not going to tell you about that, and we're going to jump as fast as we can to the actual wasteland.
Mm-hmm.
And like, on the one hand, I appreciate that you don't have to go through all right, we know the vaults, we know the gist of this. because the sequence in 3 was pretty lengthy, if I recall.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to 4, it's way short. But on the other hand, I definitely felt like it was like, all right, here's some stuff. All right, what the hell ever. All right, now you're in the wasteland.
Yeah, it didn't make a good opening.
Also, that's not how nukes work.
No, that is not how nukes work.
You don't.
Yeah.
When you are 3 feet away from a nuclear blast wave, first of all, you're dead as soon as it blows up.
Right.
And then when the blast wave hits you, everybody gets vaporized.
We've seen Terminator 2. Like,
we've
we
seen
know what
Terminator
happens.
2. We know what happens. And
Yeah.
like, I appreciate that they were going for the impact and the effect of like, oh, it blew up right in front of you. But like, there are so many moments early in Fallout 4 that are like, hey, look at how it's so AAA, bro. Like, look at how dramatic and epic this is. I'm like, no, shut up. That doesn't work. It's fake.
But here's the thing about Fallout 4, which is the struggle I was having with it the entire time I was playing it. So like, yeah, I'm a little down on it. I gave it a B on our scale. I think it's still a fun game. I think if you want more Fallout, guess what? I think it's down considering that I gave Fallout 3 a 95 on our scale. Like, I adore Fallout 3. Like, it's one of my favorite games of last console generation. And this is more Fallout. But there are things that they do that I don't think work, but then there are other things that really do. So early in the game, without spoiling anything, you meet a villain very early in the game before you even get out of the vault. What they do with that villain and the writing based around that villain is actually some of the best writing that Bethesda has ever done. So there's like this flash of brilliance in the middle of this like standard Bethesda, okay, you're the most important person in the wasteland, which I think is actually a real problem with this game, whereas in Fallout 3 you were making lots of decisions. This game suffers from the Skyrim, well, now you're the head of this, and now you're the head of this, and now you're the head of this, because you're just doing what people are telling you to do, whereas in Fallout 3 you are making decisions. You were impacting the world. This game is you are our savior because you leave where you come from and go accomplish tasks.
See, I think, and that plays
that's
into
a real problem.
I feel like that was playing into the fact that Fallout 3 was trying to hew closer to the narrative structure of Fallout 1 and 2.
Yes.
Whereas this one is definitely more of a Bethesda, like, you're the most important person in the world.
And you're
going to be the head of every guild. Like, and again, I haven't played it. I haven't played that far yet, so I don't know how it will play out. But that's sort of my suspicion with all the different factions. But on the other hand, I think the storytelling in this is like, based on what you said early on, and not that I'm saying you lied to me, I think the storytelling in this is the best Bethesda's ever pulled off. Like,
I don't think that's saying much.
It's not saying much, but it's like, it is a lot more immersive to have your character react to things when you talk. Like, when you're like in the intro, when you're looking at the other pods. And like she or he is like reacting to that, or like, when you're in a conversation and you're skipping dialogue and you hear her go, oh, okay, is that, I see.
See, now
like
I'm gonna go ahead. Sorry.
And also the fact that I missed the old Fallout dialogue options. They went with the Mass Spec wheel, which is sort of, you either get detailed options that like Fallout 3 all sort of lead you to the same point, or you get Mass Effect options that So far, it's just been, are you an ass? Are you not an ass?
Yeah.
But I feel a lot more engaged to my character. In every other Bethesda game, I was just a pair of hands floating and shooting beams at people.
Yeah. Like,
I feel a lot more like a character.
Like, compared to Skyrim, where I don't feel any character development in your dialogue. It's basically just, all you're doing is asking for information about, like, what is this dragon? I'm Dovahkiin? What does that mean? I mean, here I feel more like like Steven said, you are kind of more of a character here.
I agree with you guys, and I would rather have a voiced main character, but I gotta be honest here, this was actually one of my biggest disappointments with this game. I think the voice actors do a fine job. I think that the problem is they're not given a lot to work with. Steven kind of already said it, like, having a listing for a dialogue option as sarcastic, that's not good enough. Like, what does that mean? Am I going to be sarcastic to the person? Am I going to be sarcastic about the situation? Am I going to say this? I'm having a lot of those, like, LA.
It's very Mass Effect 1, like,
yes.
Where like like Mass Effect 1 was very like, here's the tone of your response, but that made it hard to be like, am I going to sarcastically agree, sarcastically disagree?
And again,
so
I'd
it's a
rather
step up
have
for
this.
Bethesda, definitely.
Sarcasm's just a problem in general.
But I would rather have this, but it does feel like Bethesda's first time, which is fair. This is their first time doing it. But after, I feel like I'm going to say this over and over again when I'm talking about this game. After playing The Witcher,
Mm-hmm.
it is really hard to go to this dialogue system. Like, say what you will about this being
dialogue.
They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to have you make this character's personality, whereas when you're playing as Geralt, you are playing a character and you get to kind of sort of maneuver his way through dialogue. They're trying to give you you are a character and you are a blank slate at the same time, and so they never reach a good point with either one. They just manage to pull both off. Where you again, you don't have I'm just a floating set of hands and the most important person in the world. Now you're just a character that either A, sounds like a doofus half the time because you're asking questions all the time, or you're just a dick. And like there's no variable in between. It's like, whoa, like
I actually think the male voice actor is quite a bit weaker than the woman. Like
Yeah.
I watched the first few hours. I watched him streaming the beginning as the male, and then my roommate played as the girl, and I picked the girl. The male does not sound like he had any context for what he was doing. He's like, "What is Minutemen? I'm not sure about that. Maybe this world is over."
Yeah,
I mean, that's an exaggeration, but he's a little bit rough.
yeah.
Well, you know who
who
voices the female character, right?
Who's the female character, Caitlin?
It's Courtney Taylor, who voices Jack in Mass Effect 2 and 3.
Oh, okay. So
So if you-
That explains why she sounds like a badass.
she's used to, and again, I think that this is a good stride. I don't want to kick Bethesda for this. I'm like, I think you guys are on the right track, but this is very clearly your first attempt at it. And the other problem is that their input system for this dialogue system is janky as hell because you don't immediately lock into a character when you start talking to them.
That's weird.
You get like pushed out of conversation by people passing you by. You'll have the thing where someone comes up to you and talks to you as you're talking to another character about how you're going to murder that character. Like it's even
Hello there.
more,
I didn't know you were there.
it's even more screwed up now, and I'm constantly being pushed out of dialogue, or it's not linking up right. You always have that moment where the character's back is turned to you and they talk to you at first, they finish one line of dialogue, and then they spin around to look at you. Like it still feels really off. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having The Witcher 3, like, when you walk up to somebody, they go to a black screen initially to load up the dialogue, and then when you're in dialogue with that character, and nothing can interrupt you. Like, there's nothing wrong with that system. It's time to just embrace it. Mass Effect did it. Witcher did it. Bethesda's trying, and I don't want to kick them for it, but it's still very half-assed. I found it to be
I wouldn't use the word half-assed. I would say half-baked.
Yeah, it ain't there.
This is not a lazily put together game.
And see, that's the other thing that I kind of felt is that there is a rushed quality to some aspects of this game. But getting away from the character for a second, what they do with that villain character, I do want to hit on this again. Whoever wrote that villain character and a very specific quest around that villain character, that needs to be the main writer at Bethesda right now. Because it's actually more BioWare than Bethesda. It's like, what the hell? This BioWare character got into my Bethesda game.
Waiter!
And
it's got some BioWare in my Bethesda.
And it's awesome. Like that's a moment of like, everybody talked about how in Oblivion the Dark Brotherhood quest was the best quest line. So that person went on to be the main quest designer for Fallout 3. So you had a lot of decision makings in the Fallout 3 quest design. Fallout 4, like Steven has already said, you are the Dovahkiin. You are the Vault Dweller. You are people come up to you like, man, I can't believe you took care of that Raider camp up north. You don't have that decision making that is really... Fallout 3, when they first designed Fallout 3, they said, we wanted to make a smaller world that you would replay over and over again because you could do so many different things. Yeah. Fallout 4 is Skyrim. It is more Oblivion or Skyrim than it is Fallout 3, and that, to me, is the biggest problem with this game, is I've already seen everything. I have zero desire to replay it. Like, I've already done everything. I am the most important person in the world. I have the best power armor. I have the best weapons. I've made the best decisions.
You see, I agree with that totally for Skyrim, because I have absolutely no desire to go back to that game. I'm not sure I agree with that with Fallout.
Well, but to be fair, I I sort of agree, but on the other hand, we're really early in the game.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, at the beginning of the game, I'm like, I can just play this over and over and over again. But, you know, that's definitely why I will never play Skyrim again. And Oblivion, like, I enjoyed those games, but, like, I would say Fallout 4 already feels a lot more like a Bethesda game than Fallout 3 did. Like, I like it a lot so far, but I definitely would not replay this game to be, like, a different personality. Like, I don't think you have enough flexibility in your character to do that.
Yeah,
well, I'm not sure that I would ever play a Bethesda game again to make a different character. It's just that I feel like the world and the exploration is a bit more developed in Fallout 3 and so far in Fallout 4 compared to what I've experienced in Oblivion and Skyrim.
Yeah,
it's more interesting. I have more impetus to go through again and just experience the world in Fallout than I ever do in Oblivion or Skyrim or any other Elder Scrolls game.
That I do agree with, and I definitely think Fallout 4's world is more interesting and more like there's more diegetically designed in Fallout 4 than, for example, like, you know, Oblivion or Skyrim, where it's like a random tomb with a random assortment of ghouls.
Yeah,
like,
they do a much better job
of that. It feels like a place rather than content.
And I will say, I think the main quest ends very abruptly. I'm not going to spoil anything. The main quest ends very abruptly, and it feels just as bad as Fallout 3's. Like, oop, you're done. But I think that there are implications about the world that make me a little interested for DLC. Like, okay, how are you going to deal with this now? Because some changes did happen, but you don't see any ramifications in the game as it exists now. I think I'm dancing around this as well as I can. So that's cool, but I haven't seen any impact on this world yet. It's the moment in Skyrim where, as the last Dark Brotherhood quest, you kill the Emperor. You kill the Emperor of the Elder Scrolls universe. And it's like, okay, that happened. Right, moving on. Now you would like to go do the Fighters Guild quests now, I imagine. Like, that is the moment in Fallout 4 is like, okay, this major BFD just happened, and now I need to go make sure that I do more Minutemen quests. That's a problem. That's a real problem in this game. I think we want to get away from storytelling here. You guys seem to really be in love with VATS, and I love VATS to a point. I think that the additions that they have made to VATS are minuscule at best, and it is still... I still do not like the shooting in this game, and I know you guys disagree with me on that. I think it is better. I think it is a better shooter than Fallout 3. That's for damn sure. It's hard to get much worse than the shooting in Fallout 3.
See, that's where I have to stop your verbiage there. You said it's a better shooter.
Yes.
But it's not a shooter.
It's not a shooter.
The shooting is much better, but again, it is still
It's not a shooter.
You are not meant to shoot people outside of VATS. You can, and it's no longer miserable.
But it still sucks.
It does not suck, though. That's the thing. It's not Wolfenstein, but Wolfenstein is also an on-rails run-through and blast everybody game, and it's awesome. But this is a game, to me, I don't think you should hand-wave glitches or wonkiness because, it's big. But we did it for The Witcher, and I think it's only fair to do it here. Although I think The Witcher is probably a little less glitchy than this.
I think Witcher's combat is better, too.
As an example, I started the game 3 times, and it crashed as soon as I came out of the first pod. And I just couldn't move, but the game wouldn't freeze. But
were you playing on PC or PS4?
PS4.
Oh, wow.
Okay. But on the other hand, I actually disagree that the additions to VATS are minuscule. First of all, making it run in real time makes it way more exciting because now it's no longer just, I froze it and now I win. And I get, in Fallout 3, again, they were reacting to Fallout 1 and 2. And in Fallout 1 and 2, the game stops and you have time to consider every move. But this is not Fallout 1 and 2. And I'm glad they've sort of stopped trying to embrace that because they're not... Bethesda can't make Fallout 1 and 2. They're different kinds of games.
Right.
So now, to me, it's more exciting when you go into VATS as like a roach is diving at you and you get the shot off at the last second. It does result in some jankiness where a guy runs around a corner and the camera gets weird. That happens, absolutely. And it happens pretty often. But to me, the strengths of the system outweigh the jankiness. Much like in Divinity, the overall strengths of it make me not care when the camera points at the ground. Yeah, it's silly, but it's a 200-hour game. I can deal with it looking silly occasionally because for every time it's silly, there's a time where I hit a guy in the face and his whole body blows up.
Yeah.
Those moments are so good. And as far as, VATS being required, am I still using VATS a lot? Yeah, of course I am, especially when I'm, trying to shoot someone from a distance. But I'm also using non-VATS combat a lot more than I did in Fallout 3.
Especially on scrub enemies. Like, you fight 20 rad roaches, and yeah, you can go into VATS and shoot them all, or you can just blast them all really fast and move on. And I think that really helps the pace of the game, along with making containers just open themselves automatically. Like,
yeah, that's cool. Yeah,
open a short menu. Like, a lot of the changes in this game are very reactionary towards Fallout, the way people played Fallout 3, which is the Doge can't die. You don't have to go into a room and pause the game 30 times to open boxes. You're not constantly having to go into VATS and slow things down. Everything flows a lot faster. And
it took so much getting used to, though. Like, I constantly am hitting circle on PS4 because I think I had to exit out of it, and I bring up my Pip-Boy. I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I had to do that, too. But I will say that I think that I agree with you guys. I think VATS is better overall. I like the fact that it doesn't stop instantly. Steven already hit on my biggest issue with it is when an enemy goes into cover, I think the game should know to get you out of VATS instead of you having to cancel it out manually. But I got used to it. It pissed me off a lot, and especially in the early parts of the game when you're kind of using weapons that aren't that great, and that's fine. But when those shots and VATS really matter, it was way more annoying at the start of the game. Where I have a problem here is that I think that their biggest thing in this game, and it's on the back of the box, is their new crafting system. That is front and center. That's the thing they talked about at E3. That is this is what we did different. And it's actually kind of cool in that every item in the environment is now viable to your crafting system. Like you find a toy car, and maybe that'll give you a screw that you can use to put a new stock on your gun. That's really cool, and I like that whole like vendor thing of like, oh my god, I found like a lava lamp or I found a desk lamp and I'm going to use this. I really like that. But it isn't as fleshed out, and it's actually not working well with their new system. So you put a new stock on your rifle, and it says that it's going to give you better recoil. But if you're going to continue to play this game mostly in VATS, what does that less recoil mean in terms of your VATS? Does that mean that you're suddenly going to start hitting more?
It means your accuracy doesn't decrease if you change targets as you swap in VATS.
But now you start getting into even more bizarre things where it's like, okay, I just put this reflex scope on my gun, and even though that put the weight up, which seems to be the determining factor for how many shots I can get off in VATS, now I'm getting off 6 shots in VATS where before I was getting 4. And there's no indication that that's happening unless you put the mod on the weapon, go out of the crafting menu, go shoot at one, or just set up a shot against one of your scrub follower characters to see how many shots you get off with VATS. Okay, I get off 5. Now we go back over to the crafting menu. Let's put this stock on. Now how many shots do I get in VATS? Oh, I get 4. Okay, let's go into the crafting. That gets really old after 50 hours, guys.
Are you sure that's the case? Because I was crafting last night, and there's a menu that shows exactly what statistics the parts have.
Yeah,
right.
And
but wait, guys, I'm actually going to get pissed off here because I spent 2 hours screwing around with this. Weight is the most determining factor. It is. But every weapon has a base number of shots that it gets off in VATS. Regardless of the weapon's weight, the game does not tell you that, and certain modifications, even though they increase the weight, they give you more shots in VATS. And there is no indication of what's going on there, and it's a problem. Okay, I'm not meaning to sound pissed off, but after screwing around with this for 2 hours, I'm really sick and tired of it. It's not explained well, and it is going to be one of the first modifications that comes out from the community. And for a series, after listening to people bitch and complain about the Souls games hiding their numbers, for me to be the only reviewer that's pointing it out with Fallout 4, that's Bethesda getting a little bit of a pass here. It's not explained as well as it could be.
I'll agree with that, but this is not the only game where there are hidden stats on your equipment that affect the damage or whatnot. That's not anything that hasn't already been done before.
And they need to do better. It is not fun to constantly have to go back to the crafting menu over and over again and to go out and find my dog. No, you can't even aim at the dog, so you need a different follower.
Good Lord, Rob, calm down.
Just to aim at him.
No, you don't aim at the dog. That's horrible.
But I'm just saying, guys, that like this system is not as well crafted, as it could be, and it's really obnoxious. Like all they need is a stat that says base speed or something in VATS. That's all they needed, and they don't even have that, and that's not good enough. If you're going to spend all this time on this crafting system, isn't that not the most important stat? Wouldn't that be the stat that you're most interested in, is how many shots you can get off in VATS?
I'm probably more interested in damage.
I think damage and number of shots in VATS will end up being your most important stats. Regardless, after a few hours of playing this game, those are going to be your two most important stats. And it's also really weird because now they've put in a loot system into the game, which you'll find unique weapons, which were in Fallout 3. Like this weapon has minus 25% AP usage in VATS. Okay, that's perfectly fine. And so when you find one of those weapons, now that becomes your primary weapon. Cool, I guess, that's fine. But there's a randomness to these weapons, and there's also a sense of, wow, I spent all this time crafting this one weapon, and now this random thing that I just found in the environment is better. Now I got to start making modifications for that. So there is.
Again, this is not unique to Fallout.
No, it's not. But
that's part of the fun of the system. Is I made this weapon better. I found something better. Now I'm going to make that better. Like that to me, that's interesting. It shouldn't just be I made this weapon amazing. Now it's the best thing in the game, and everything else sucks.
Yeah. It is bizarre when a bolt action rifle for no reason is taking more shots in VATS than a shotgun. That starts getting very bizarre. It's like, wait a minute, this is a bolt action rifle. The speed of this weapon is blah. The shotgun's speed is blah, but one's getting 4 shots in VATS and one is getting 2.
I mean, if there's something that's off with the correlation of
shotgun.
If it's the numbers that are not working the way you expect them to, that I understand. But like, I guess I feel like you're fixated on the fact that these are different classifications of guns, and you have an expectation going in that they should behave a certain way.
But
is that what it is?
But it's not just that. It's that I already said that, in that every base gun has a base amount of shots that it can get off in VATS. But the only way to find that out is to take said gun, go into VATS against an enemy, and see how many shots you can get off with it. Again, this should be front and center on the gun's stats. If you're going to have all of these stats on the gun, including accuracy at a range, why aren't you including that as like speed? And again, it is most closely tied to weight, but it's not the determining factor all the time. I had the weight go down one time, but because I wasn't using the right kind of scope, the number of shots in VATS also went down.
Yeah, but isn't the number of shots is also dependent on your AP? It's not
your
just
AP,
dependent.
Like your AP is fixed by your agility.
Your perks, your stats.
Right, but
Right.
that
None
can
of those
be...
guys, I'm telling you, none of those stats changed, but because I had a different type of scope on the weapon, even though it increased the weight, it gave me more shots in VATS. That needs to be explained in your system. I'm
confused, though. Agility is a stat that you can put points into. How does that not change?
Okay, I'm counting to 3 here.
Okay, then let's back off.
No, but what I'm saying is that I have not impacted my character. I have taken a gun, I have put a new stock and a new scope on it. I have 4 shots in VATS. I take the scope off, now I have 3 shots in VATS, even though the weight just decreased. I put a different stock on that's heavier, now I go down to 2 shots in VATS. I put the scope back on, now I go back to 4 shots in VATS. It's bizarre. It seems closely tied to weight, but it is not the determining factor. The scopes are doing weird things, different types of magazines are doing weird things. All they needed was it. Again, all of my problems are gone if there is just a magic number that says this is the AP cost. That is okay. All this game needed. If it went from it's 33 points to 36 points, I have 150 points in VATS. I now know how many shots I can get off. That's all they needed.
That's fine. AP cost, I understand, but what I was trying to say is they can't just say, oh, this is how many shots you're going to have in VATS, because it's not just the weapon, it's also how much AP you had to determine how much shots.
But Caitlin, they could calculate that for you. If they were a really good game development company with a good UI, hello Blizzard, they would tell you how many shots you can get off in VATS. It's an easy.
Well, to be fair, it also took Blizzard 2 years to do that in Diablo 3.
Right, but again, what I'm saying is that stat needs to be front and center on the game, and it will be. I'm sure Bethesda's going to come out. That's the thing that really pisses me off, guys, is that they're going to come out with a mod that says, or they're going to do it themselves and say, yeah, we should have had that before, and it's like, yeah, and I'm telling you that now, and nobody on your game development thought that was a good idea. Like that's the Witcher 3 of like you don't have a stash, and they finally added a stash to the game like 3 months later. Like, really? Nobody thought it was a good idea to have a stash in your game? Like, we had to tell you that? Like, that's the groupthink that starts to happen with Bethesda games that drive me a little nuts. It's like, nobody thought to do that? Like, again, I think the game, Derek kind of said in the pre-show, I think Bethesda games get a little bit of a free pass on some of that stuff because they are so big. And I'm not saying you guys are doing that, but it really started to irritate the crap out of me. And it's one of those things where I just wish the UI had a number, just AP cost. That's all they need. That's all they need. That's an afternoon. Would give a developer a sandwich, and they can come up with that because they clearly have the calculation. It's there. So why isn't it just being included in the UI? I don't want to belabor this point too long. The other issue is that you can spend all day crafting your settlements and everything, but all the settlement missions are boring as hell because all it is go somewhere and annihilate all the super mutants or defend the base. That's another problem, is how boring that stuff is. That you talk about the Skyrim, oh yes, we have infinite quests because we just keep repeating the same quest to go to the same dungeon and wipe out the same characters over and over again. That exists in Fallout 4, and it's based around their settlement system, which I had zero desire to screw around with. Like, I'm not going to spend hours and hours screwing with this settlement system because all of the quests associated with them are beyond boring. Like, there are amazing quests in this game. I got one that was really cool where it kind of has like an old film noir, like detective story vibe. That part was awesome. But for that one quest, there were like 5 go eliminate all the ghoul quests. And we complained about that with Skyrim, and now it's here in Fallout 4, and it wasn't in Fallout 3. Fallout 3 only had like 20 quests, and each one was different, and each one was unique. And Fallout 4 is kind of falling into the trap of a lot of go annihilate these enemies because we told you to. And I'm sorry I got heated, guys, but I know how pissy I get about UI, but all my problems would have been solved by one little addition to their UI, and I cannot believe that nobody at Bethesda thought to do that. Like, I really cannot believe that nobody didn't. How can nobody put up their hand and go, we need a number? That there needs to be a number. If you're going to have all these numbers in place, why not just include a number?
I wish I could actively contribute to this discussion, but having not seen any of it, I don't know what to say other than I wish I could make you a sandwich. Give that to you so you could enjoy it.
It's a good game. I don't want to get lost in the minutia. I had fun with it. There's an amazing moment in the middle of the game that was like this, just Bethesda knocking it out of the park in terms of environmental design and atmosphere. It's the best thing they've ever done, and that's really what saved me on this game. Was like it finally did something unique. It stopped putting me into Super Mutant after Super Mutant encounter. It stopped putting me into, go get the thing at this location and bring it back to me. I'm gonna cough real quick. It finally did a really cool moment. I just wish the game had more of those cool moments. I wish the game had more of those, like that awesome villain moment and the science fiction thing that they kind of do with him. There's really great moments trying to get out of this game, but then there's a lot of that Bethesda go here because reasons over and over again, and that did bum me out a little bit. Because I expected more. And their art design is still out of control good. The laser rifle that you get within the first 10 minutes is one of the coolest. It's a crank-operated laser rifle. That sounds cool. I love that. There are really cool moments. The way they even use VATS in some ways, how you can like take out the legs of an enemy, so that way you neutralize them. That's really cool. So there are these things that they're doing that are good, but I think that it is still the same lockpicking minigame, the same computer hacking minigame, the same things over and over again. And I think it's time for Bethesda to kind of push forward a little bit here. I wasn't expecting safe out of them. I wasn't expecting a Fallout game that was that close to Fallout 3. I was expecting them to really say, hey, we're going to make the next generation of our type of game. No, they kind of just made another one of their types of games. And that's fine. That's good. But Witcher came out. A lot of other open world games have come out.
That I will say is fair. The Witcher did indeed come out.
Yeah, but they were developing this. I mean, I don't know how fair it is to say, oh, well, The Witcher came out. Why can't you be more like The Witcher? They can't go back in time and start development after The Witcher.
No, I don't think that's what Rob means. At least that's not what I mean. What I mean is that it's not a they should have reacted to it. It's a no, they didn't know that was going to happen, but unfortunately it did. So the landscape into which that game has come out is different. When the expectations are different. Like, now that The Witcher has come out, I do have different expectations for an open world game. And I expect one of those things to not be me running around doing tedious nonsense.
And
again, I don't know that, I have not done any tedious nonsense yet in this game, but my overwhelming impression I've gotten so far is that I like it. It's definitely not like Fallout 3. I actually think it's quite a bit different. I think it's more Skyrim or Oblivion than Fallout 3. And that's why I do suspect that this will become a game that I enjoy, but am probably not going to fall in love with, because it does feel, and from everything I've seen, it seems a lot like, I actually really like the story. So I in a week or two, I would love to revisit this, but it is a very safe game. Rob is right. This is a safe game. They refined their systems a lot, and that's a great thing, and I think there's a lot of audience for that, and I certainly like the improvements, but I can already tell right off the bat that I still am going to prefer The Witcher 3, because The Witcher 3 I felt more engaged by the world and the story. And also, it didn't freeze when I started the game. But
I think that's probably true for all of us.
And
but what I got sort of off topic. What I think Rob's point is that not that Bethesda should have known that these other games were going to come out, but that they have come out. It's just like how Xenoblade Chronicles X is huge, but a lot of games are huge now. So that, to me, a big world is no longer a selling point, because everybody does that. So you have to, and I'm not picking on Xenoblade. I haven't played that, and I don't know how that's going to be. But what I mean is to say, it's the Final Fantasy 15 demo discussion. I don't want to just walk around and pick up random rocks. That's not interesting. You have to give me something interesting to do in your world. And so far, what I've done in Fallout 4 is interesting.
Right, and again, it's not, Bethesda should have gone back to the drawing boards because Witcher 3 came out in May. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that Bethesda used to be the only guys that made this type of game. Guys and gals who made this type of game. A lot of other game companies are now doing open world games with huge levels of interaction. And so because of that, it's really starting to show that, well, they need to start advancing their formula a little bit. They need to start trying to do some new things. I mean, there was a little part of me that was disappointed, like, I'm going to do the exact same stealth minigame, which also their stealth mechanics are pretty broken in this game. The sneak attack works about 1/3 the time it should. It flat out doesn't make sense half the time. My sneak on my character on my PlayStation 4 game is all the way up. His agility is 10, and I'm still attacking things that don't see me, and I'm not getting sneak attacks. That's still not working. A lot of their Bethesda problems are still here. I'm still interacting with their game the exact same way. I mean, even take a game like Divinity. Divinity, to me, is the level of interaction from a Bethesda game on a smaller scale. And I actually prefer that in a lot of ways. Like the Bethesda waiting until their back is turned to start stealing everything at the vendor, I'm still doing that. I guess I'm just ready for new ways to interact with characters. I'm ready for Bethesda to once again be the market leader in open world games, because now so many other companies are doing open world games. And again, that's not to say this is a bad game. That's not what I'm saying. But it is very safe, like Steven said, like I said in my review. It's very safe, and it's more Fallout. And I think for a lot of people that's great. But I've been playing a lot of open world games, and I even said on this very show a couple months back, I got a lot of open world fatigue. I've been playing a lot of open world games.
No, I absolutely agree. And that's the thing is, I definitely think I will enjoy this game. I like it so far, and I definitely like what I've seen, considering I was pretty negative leading to the release of this game. But again, there have been a lot of open world games, and the bar is higher. Big world is no longer a thing. But like, to talk more to the strengths of it, like I think I do want more from Bethesda, but I also think that the jump may not be as big as we would have wanted, but I do think there are a lot of improvements to Bethesda's formula in this, and the sense of place is definitely one of them. Like,
Oh yeah.
like going to areas, like they definitely have done a better job of filling their areas with stuff that's interesting rather than just like a bad guy in a box and there's an item in the box and it's a generic randomly generated bullet. Like there's a lot less of that, and there's a lot more atmosphere in the areas. Again, I don't necessarily think that it's to the level of Witcher 3, because that's pretty much my gold standard for open world games at this point. But I think this is still a big improvement over their general style, and it's more a personal thing for me that it does feel more like an Elder Scrolls than a Fallout. It feels like an Elder Scrolls with VATS. And I like that, and I like the setting a lot more, so I think I will like it better, but it definitely feels even less like Fallout 1 and 2 than Fallout 3 did.
I think. Go ahead, Caitlin. Go ahead.
Well, for me, I don't know. I think maybe my expectations were just, in general with Bethesda, lower. So the fact that it's a Bethesda game, that it's more Fallout, that maybe works a little bit better in most places, but still overall is a Bethesda game, is just fine with me. So I don't know, maybe it's based on where you're coming into the series, and your history with it. I also have not played a lot of Bethesda games beyond Fallout 3, Oblivion, and Skyrim, so there's that to consider too. As far as Witcher 3 is concerned, no, it's not. I agree. Probably nothing is going to top Witcher 3 until we see whatever CD Projekt Red is doing with 2077. But I don't know, it's this weird thing where Bethesda's almost like their own genre of RPG for me. And
I definitely agree.
Yeah, to a certain extent, while I'm thinking about Witcher 3 in the back of my mind, I'm not really directly comparing them, because to me, this is its own thing. They're both open world RPGs, but this is a Bethesda open world RPG, and it's a certain style there that is only Bethesda. So I don't necessarily directly compare them as much, which is why I kind of was like, yeah, well, of course it's not as good as Witcher 3, but what are you going to do? Expect Bethesda to, not be Bethesda?
I think the thing I'll leave it with here is to go back to when they first announced Fallout 3 and there were the first screenshots in Game Informer for it, and like I lost my mind when they said we wanted to make a smaller world that was more interactive and you could make bigger choices. I think that's the direction I wanted them to go, Caitlin. I think I wanted a smaller world where it wasn't about a huge world map. It wasn't about lots and lots of different areas. It was about making the Megaton decision, literally, like making the decision to obliterate Megaton, making the decision to interact with the Republic of Dave. Those
I remember that.
those moments aren't here, and so it feels a little hollow. And I don't mean to be so negative. And again, I apologize to you guys for getting pissed off about a stupid discussion about UI, but that sort of thing is a pet peeve, and I should have controlled that better. But I just really wish that this game had gone smaller and more intimate in a way, instead of making me the Dovahkiin of the Wasteland. I think that's my biggest bummer, is I wanted this to be like Fallout 3, where I played 4 different characters to make 4 different sets of decisions, to try different character types, to try different things that I was good at in combat. I really wanted that, and I didn't get that with this game. And so there's a little bit of a downer there, but I guess I'd like to see Bethesda try to do smaller. Try to do smaller and more intimate. If that, maybe I'm completely out to lunch there, but
that's more the design trend that I'm interested in the first place. Like, I find that as AAA games are becoming these louder and louder sort of screaming matches between companies where they want to have the biggest world and the most features, it's the smaller, sort of more thoughtful experiences that draw me in the most. So I think Bethesda could do great if they sort of focus themselves.
I prefer Arkham Asylum to any of the other Arkham games, and I think there's a reason for that.
I think I agree with that, with the exception of The Witcher, but
Yeah,
I
which are
also
special.
think, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen with Bethesda.
Yeah.
Bethesda has made a large amount of dollar bills making the Bethesda experience, so I do not think they are going to get smaller and more intimate. They're going to get bigger and bigger.
Does anybody else want to see them do a completely different world? Because if I get another Elder Scrolls game, I'm gonna eye roll pretty hard. Like
Yeah.
I liked Skyrim a lot, and I actually want to see them do something completely different now. I'm gonna be really bummed if we get their DLC, and then 3 years from now we're talking about Elder Scrolls 6.
I mean, I think that's what's coming.
I
but-
know.
Yeah.
And I love the Fallout world. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm gonna get the Fallout art book because I think their art design is out of control, amazing. I love that 1950s retro future. I love all that stuff. I'm ready for a different kind of Bethesda game and a different kind of how I interact with it. I could use some different things, but let's get away from Fallout 4. Again, listeners, you're going to enjoy it. If you loved Fallout 3, I think you're going to enjoy it. But I think you you have to temper yourself a little bit with you're going to get more Fallout.
I think that's the main thing, is that I think that this is a great game, and I like it a lot so far. It's not going to be my favorite game ever. I mean, maybe it will. Who knows? I haven't played the story yet. But it's, your expectations also matter. Like, if you are looking for the Fallout experience, but sort of combined with the reputation Bethesda has of late, that's what you're going to get. It's a very Elder Scrolls-y style Fallout, with a lot of mechanical improvements. If you're looking for the kind of karma and the megaton thing, and again, I haven't played enough, so I've actually heard the opposite, that there are a lot of big decisions to be made. So I can't comment on that. But it's not the same. It does not seem like it's the same style as 3, 1, and 2.
One of my biggest takeaways so far is that the character creator does not look like Butt, and you can run diagonally in third person, and third person is actually viable in this game.
I think their third person is where maybe that's one of the things they need to do better. There were moments where I really, when I say do better, I mean like that should be one of the things that they continue to focus on. There were moments where I felt the third person shooting was better than the first person shooting, just because the gun takes up a lot of real estate sometimes on the screen, and that's a huge pet peeve of mine with a shooter. I don't like it when the gun takes up a fourth of the screen. I don't like that at all. That's why I change my FOV slider on my PC version all the time. But there were moments where that third person shooting felt really good, like almost Mass Effect. And I'm like, maybe that's the direction for you guys to go. Maybe work on that a little bit. So, anywho, Danganronpa.
Danganronpa.
I like it. That game starts really freaking slow, though. Wow.
So you guys both say that, but it's like, have you not played a visual novel before?
999 starts you off with, dude, you're in a room and you're gonna die. Figure it out. Like,
I actually found 999's intro to be a little slow too. Not relative to Danganronpa. Like, 999 certainly puts you in an exciting situation, but there's definitely the info dump at the beginning of 999.
but I still think that they start 999 and Virtue's Last Reward with a puzzle. So I think that's kind of the beginning part that gets your attention. But you're right, they do the info dump. The problem is that there's nothing else in Danganronpa except the info dump at the very beginning.
Well, there's the info dump. There's we put you in your 3D room to walk around this giant space that you're not really sure what you should be doing. Like, and that there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But it's just like, you're in the school, walk everywhere and look at everything.
It also introduces you to a huge cast of characters.
Oh my! I still don't know all their names. I'm not even.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think that's negligible. I mean, you'll learn their names as you go, and it's not. I mean, some of them are gonna die.
Yeah, except
Right
and that was the thing. So like, I wasn't really into the game, and I played for I'd say maybe 2.5, 3 hours before it grabbed me, and it grabbed me with the first character death because, without spoiling, this is the first Danganronpa. The character death that happens is so telegraphed. Like, it might as well be the big boobed blonde that's like, let's go outside and make s'mores and have sex. Like, it might as well be that character. Like, it is right down to like Cabin in the Woods level of, oh man, they're gonna get it. But then they follow that up with an absolute gut punch that got my attention, where I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'm interested now.
that's Danganronpa. What
I
it
like
does
that.
is it will sort of overtly telegraph things to you to lead you to think things, and I think that in that particular that the first death in Danganronpa serves as kind of it's establishing that it's possible for them to lead you down a predictable path, and it's also possible for them to completely gut punch you, like
Which
you
is
said.
cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think much of the predictability of that first death is sort of there to for them to build upon and mess with your head going forward.
I agree, and the game now has my attention. I saw what Steven was talking about because the introduction of all the characters is very tropey, but I think after that they start to have nuance to them, and Derek, you've talked about that too, so I'm enjoying that. It's got my attention now, but I will say that if you're going to give Danganronpa a try, get to the first death. I know how weird that sounds, but like it
Sure.
doesn't it does the visual novel thing where it's got to give you the info dump. I think it takes too long and there's a lot of repetition. Like if I had to hear Monokuma say one more time, "Get ready to greet another beautiful day," like I was like, okay, are they like I've heard this like 20 times. Like I'm like really like I get the repetition, but what are we doing here? Like, let's get started. Does two start that slow, or does two get?
Yeah, it's pretty much
Oh,
it's similarly paced. I think that Danganronpa might be a little bit harder to recommend in general than say 999 or VLR, just because I think Danganronpa puts up this facade of being this really tropey, sort of like over the top anime, super anime special kind of thing. But then once you
kawaii.
right, then
I'm the
once you
best. He's the best of this or the best of that.
right, and it's a little bit more outlandish, and so it doesn't make the best first impression if you don't have the stomach for that kind of stuff.
Right.
But once you delve a little bit deeper and you start to peel the layers away, you're like, oh, holy crap, they're going to completely subvert all of this. Like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's both, that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something to keep in mind. I
Yeah.
think VLR and 999, for all of their crazy twists, sort of wear themselves on their sleeve a little bit better. But yeah.
I'm enjoying it. I'm now invested. It took a little bit to get invested. I really like the music. I really
Yeah, it's good.
I like the art design. Is it so? The first time a character dies, I know this is a weird thing to ask, but the blood is pink.
Yeah.
Is that censorship or
No,
is that
it's
how it
not.
was in the Japanese
That's
version?
how it is. That's a
Okay.
stylistic choice.
It was so
And
weird. It was
it
almost
threw
like
me off.
yeah, it was like Kill Bill style. Like whoa, like that's
I
we
think
like hyper
they're
realistic.
yeah, they're trying to make it yeah, because it is very hyperviolent. They're trying to juxtapose all of this weird sort of not quite believable the I don't know, these not quite believable facets of the presentation with the horrible murder and thematic elements at play.
Right, right.
And I think that it makes for a really fascinating presentation, but it is super weird for sure. The first time I saw it, I was like, that's gruesome, and why is the blood pink? What's going on? Yeah, but it is on purpose. It's not censored.
I'm so excited for Zero Time Dilemma. I'm like I
Oh my god!
I'm like
Yeah.
that. Caitlin, have you played 999 or Virtue's Last Reward?
No,
Okay, stop.
no.
You are no longer allowed back on this show until you.
Do I not get to like explain myself?
No, no, that's not actually how this show. Go ahead, Caitlin.
No, I haven't played either, and I've been interested in different places. I know that there's actually like a puzzle-less version on iOS that I've toyed with getting, just because I'm interested. I honestly I'm more interested in the story than I would be interested in puzzle aspects, which is part of the reason why I didn't really get into it. So that's just kind of that's me.
Yeah, I haven't played the iOS version. I have heard that it kind of messes with the flow because I don't know. I think the puzzles in that game serve because when you're doing the puzzles, you're often interacting with the characters that are stuck in the room with you, and they're like, "Have you tried doing this?" And you're getting some development of those characters as you do it. So I think removing the puzzles is kind of cutting holes in the narrative in a sense, and it doesn't eliminate any major like I don't think there's any major plot point that happens mid puzzle necessarily, but I don't know. I think the puzzles punctuate those games, and they do serve a purpose. They're not just there for no reason. So while I think it's viable for you to play the iOS version, I would say you probably get more out of playing the regular version with a guide
And
than
you
you
get
would.
and you get to use a piece of chicken to blow up a frozen door.
Hell yeah.
And that was like one of those like what? Like but I think it's okay to play those games with a guide. I reached a point with VLR where I got kind of fed up with the puzzles because
I
like
did too.
a couple of times I thought I had the puzzle figured. There's nothing worse than thinking that you figured out the puzzle and you're wrong, but the only reason you're wrong is because you're using like base 15 instead of base 20. Like that to me is a bad puzzle where I'm like, okay, I actually have the right idea, but I just picked the wrong number to use. Like that's very frustrating to me when I'm doing a puzzle. Like I forget which Assassin's Creed it was, but one of them, like one of the puzzles was a Fibonacci sequence, and I recognized it, but one of the numbers was wrong. So like I got the puzzle, and then I spent 2 days like on the like trying it and then giving up because I got fed up with it, and it turned out, oh yeah, instead of 16, it was 17.
Hmm.
Like what?
Yeah, that's
Ugh.
frustrating.
But yeah, Danganronpa, I'm enjoying it. I really like the anime aesthetic. I like the different characters, and the game, like Derek said, it was able to kind of lull me into a false sense of security by playing the tropes, and then it punched me in the throat, which I really really liked. And it was almost a moment of like, did that really just happen? Like what?
Yeah.
And that for the game to surprise me like that, I was like, okay, Danganronpa, I'm on to you now.
And I
I'm
think I've said as much before, but for listeners or for either of you guys, oh, Steven, you played it, but Caitlin, have you played Danganronpa?
No.
Okay. If you
That's
care
two
enough,
strikes, right?
no, it's okay. I forgive
Yeah,
you.
and you like Fallout 4. I just don't even know what to do.
Wow.
I'm such a horrible human being.
I know.
The damn worst. But if you're kind of on the fence and you want to see what Danganronpa is all about, I think it's perfectly viable to watch the anime and then play the second one following that because that's what I did. But I mean, it's I mean, I played like the first couple of hours of the first one and then I switched over to the anime. And I wouldn't necessarily say that it's a perfectly viable substitute. It's you get more out of the game for sure, but if the premise is interesting, but the idea of putting like 20 hours into a visual novel isn't interesting to you or isn't appealing, then that's an option. It's quirky and weird enough that I think it's worth checking out.
Oh, I've put a good amount of time into other visual novels like Hakuoki and Sweet Fuse. It's just I don't know. Part of it is just the style doesn't necessarily grab me as much.
It's weird for sure. I didn't jive with it either at first. But
I don't know how I feel about the one female like karate character.
Sakura?
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Like
Which one?
I think it's okay. We're not getting I'm not bringing up a Dragon's Crown, but it was like, whoa, that's
Speaking of which, did you see that figure? The
oh
Dragon's Crown
my
figure?
I don't know what I'm even looking. That's just a geometric shape for abs. Like that's all I see there is just I'm trying to find a way. It's like Polygon Man from the old Sony like PlayStation ads. You guys remember that? Yeesh. Anywho, Jesus God, why would you send me that picture? Oh my
You
God.
sent all of us that picture.
Oh my God.
If I
Nightmare
must
fuel.
suffer, you too must suffer.
I don't know if I'm turned on or not. I'm just confused. What is going on? Like the thong is like over the ridge of
It's like that scene in Space Jam where Bugs Bunny gets all buffed up and he's like weirdly proportioned, except
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny.
yeah, except it's a chick.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. All right, so I don't think we have any other games to talk about. I didn't see anything about
You are not
what is this Final
cutting us
Fantasy.
out of talking about
Final
that.
Justice.
No. Final Fantasy 11 and 14 don't exist. Those games aren't considered canon.
Oh my God. We were talking pre-show about which games we were going to discuss, and Caitlin said Final Fantasy 14, and Rob starts going.
Oh, I tease.
He's an asshole.
I tease. It is a good game for people that like those kinds of games. That is fine.
That's so
Well,
dismissive.
okay.
Well,
That's not dismissive. I don't like every type of game out there, but I can still appreciate that what they're doing is good. It's just not for me.
But I think you just oversimplified because I hate the MMO style of game,
Yeah.
and I like Final Fantasy 14. Admittedly, I don't do any of the grindy go and get your extra 2 stat points after 900 hours weapon thing, but the Heavensward content is awesome.
Well, you guys go ahead and start talking about your Final Fantasy 14s. Caitlin, I know you love this game, so please extol the virtues.
Okay, so we're talking about the latest patch, patch 3.1, which has a very lengthy title, which I'm probably going to mess up. What is it?
As
As
goes
goes
light,
light,
so
so
goes
goes
So it
darkness.
goes,
darkness.
yeah. Long setup, which kind of has to do with your character being the warrior of light, and there is darkness involved. I'm not going to spoil anything, mostly because I haven't really dug into the main storyline part of the patch yet, so I don't even know what's going on.
And because I
Um,
hasn't finished the storyline before the patch,
yeah.
even though
So
basically everybody has spoiled the final boss, but that's okay.
So a lot of new things with this patch, new dungeons, some of which are really freaking gorgeous. There's a new, yes. Oh my
Yeah,
God, it's so
so good.
beautiful.
It's like a
There's a new,
weird botanical garden that has plants from all over the realm, and of course, some of the plants are mutated, and you have to kill them because why wouldn't you? So, it's
yeah,
cool.
par for the course in a Final
Yeah,
Fantasy game, I guess.
yeah.
But there's also a new 24-man raid, sort of the Heaven's Word version of the Crystal Tower series, which is Void Ark, which takes place on a giant, freaky looking ship, which is very cool and purpley and a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops in future patches. The story is actually really cool.
It
Not that
is.
Crystal Tower wasn't, but this is also really neat and probably going to be a little bit more up certain people's alleys for reasons I
Yeah,
won't spoil.
and just as the Crystal Tower content had many references to past Final Fantasy, particularly three, it was just like a giant love letter to Final Fantasy three. This has some references as well, and not overtly to past Final Fantasies as much, but they have characters from past games that you will recognize. So, including a particular fan. I don't know if I would call him a fan favorite, him or her.
Who's a
I
fan
love
favorite of mine?
I love this character, but a lot of people don't, at least in the game that person was featured in so heavily.
Ah, well, they can be over in that corner
That's right.
and the rest of us can be over in this corner.
They're all so wrong.
um, there's a few things I haven't done yet. I haven't fought there's a hard mode of a boss that I also will not say what it's called for spoilers. And then there's a mini game. I think, Derek, you've played Lord of
Yeah.
Verminion.
hmm it's Lord of Verminion. It's a pun on the Square Enix's other arcade card battling strategy game. It's a game where you can take all of your little minions in Final Fantasy XIV, which were previously just cosmetic things that followed you around, and they're super cute. But there are some people out there that hate anything that isn't functional in some way, and I'm not one of those people. But what they did was they added in a mode so that you can take all of those little minions that you've been collecting and make them fight to the death. It's like a tower defense game of sorts. It's pretty cool. I haven't played a ton of it. I played the first. There are like 24 single player challenges, and you can also play against other people, and then they have rankings and stuff. So it's really involved. It's not just something that they threw together at the last second. But um, it seems a little slow to me. They've certainly put a lot of effort into making this a robust minigame, but like my roommate is really into StarCraft. I mean, he's watching StarCraft streams 24/7. When I am downstairs hanging out, I see him play StarCraft constantly, and I see how fast it moves. And compared to that, Lord of Verminion is like molasses. But I mean, they're different. They're different sort of things. So it's a mini RTS of sorts. But it's a cool distraction, and I think that it should retain some popularity for a while because it does have tournaments and rankings. Um, yeah, I mean, it gives me an
It's
excuse to summon like 20 Kate Sith dolls and make them beat a bunch of golems to death.
Yeah, I think it's a cool way to have your minions actually be there for something other than just cute stuff to follow you around, which is fun. I love them because they're cute, but it's nice to say, well, now you might actually want to start collecting certain minions because they belong to different types and they may have different stats and they may have different special attacks to
Right.
actually use like that. I mean, I don't do a whole lot of stuff in the gold saucer. It took me forever to unlock it, but I might actually want to go there more now just because this is something I can actually use all these cute little minions I've collected.
Yeah, I'm already kind of a minion collector because I think they're cute and fun. And one thing that I do like is that the devs specifically stated that they're not making the rare minions any stronger necessarily, because there are some minions that are like, I have several that I got because I bought the soundtrack Blu-rays, and then there's one that came with the official art book, and those are pricier things that not everybody's going to buy just for a minion, which is totally reasonable. So I think it would be a problem if you spent $50 to get the best minion, you know. So they're making sure that that doesn't happen. However, they do all have individual abilities, which is super cool. Every single minion, and I mean, there's well over 100. There's probably I don't know how many minions there are, like 150, maybe more than that. Each and
I would
every
not be
one
surprised.
has a specific ability with its own name and everything. Like it's not just like they're set into generic types. It's like this is the Warrior of Light minion, and he has, you know, Attack of Light or whatever it's called. So they've definitely put enough effort into this to make this worth checking out.
Yeah. And for me, the most interesting and cool and fun thing so far in the patch has been Diadem, which are the exploratory missions that you can go on with your airship. That before you would send your airship out and it would collect things and whatnot, but you didn't actually go anywhere with it. And now everyone jumps on and you go to this other place, which is massive and has all these different floating islands all over the place. And you run around in a party, killing monsters, fulfilling objectives. There are things for gatherers to do to get special materials. And it's a lot of fun to run with your party and just go around. I mean, it's like another big zone, but you're in a party group with objectives, so it feels a little bit more focused. But there's still a lot of freedom to explore and find new things and get some cool, possibly very randomized loot out of it.
Yeah, the freedom is the biggest thing that I like, because you do have your semi-random objectives, but it's not like at least so far, there isn't there's no etiquette in place so that you get in and people are immediately like, Group A, do this thing. Group B, blah, blah, blah. If you diverge, you're getting punished. Like, you can actually sort of say, like, oh, one of our objectives is mining. I'm going to run off and mine some stuff while you guys fight the monsters. Or I have to find a chest, so I'm going to go search for the chest. You guys do that, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it encourages a lot of collaboration and experimentation, because there are other groups in the area that aren't in your party. And so people will say, like, hey, I found this rare monster at this spot. Come fight him with me. And then everybody gets stuff out of it. It's not just, like, the person who claims it or whatever.
And those super rare mobs can be pretty difficult, so you actually find yourself really being grateful for the extra help from other parties that are in there with you, because they're gigantic and they're deadly, and I died so many times.
And they're dinosaurs. They're giant.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs.
They're not the only ones, but it's cool to fight something that big.
The loot's really cool what they did. It's there's different tiers of, item level 150 or item level 210, and they have random stats, so you could get something really crappy or something really awesome, but they also have random glamour. So you could get a piece that, okay, it looks like it should look like this, but it already has another piece pre-glamored on it. And I've seen some weird things, like a piece that I think had scholar equipment on it that could be worn by other healers.
Yeah, I saw that exact thing. Basically, it was a machinist piece that had the Bard armor glamored onto it. So it opens up some unique possibilities for people customizing their appearance, although it's so random and unpredictable that you can't really make that an objective to, like, I'm going to go out and find the one with this appearance. But it's cool. It's I guess another way for people to distinguish themselves. Like, hey, that's a machinist over there, and he looks like a bard. That's weird. But it's neat. I think the exploratory missions are a step in the right direction for introducing more high-level content that people can get into on a casual basis, because you can queue for this solo and get into it solo, and then they place you into a group, and you're not sort of forced to stay beyond. Like, you can complete the objectives and leave, or you can complete the objectives and stay. They give you like an hour and a half in there. So if you want to just mess around, fight more monsters, explore, you can do that. The one thing that I would say to its detriment is that I expected it to be sort of a randomly generated thing every time you entered, and it's not. It's one zone, and you start in different parts every time you enter the zone, but it is possible to sort of map the whole thing and know what it all looks like, which was kind of a
I did. Like on
Yeah,
my
'cause
first trip in, I completed my map. So
I did too. Yeah, because when they talked about like you're exploring heretofore unexplored lands, and it's this big thing about like adventurers pioneering, I really did expect sort of smaller maps that were more randomized or just randomized in general so that you couldn't predict exactly what was going to happen. But I suppose in this way it allows people to formulate strategies and stuff. I don't know. I mean, it comes with pros and cons,
yeah.
but it's a
Well,
cool.
one of the cool things too is like you can change your class once you're in there. Like with other instance content, once you load, you have to say the class that you queued as. But here, you can queue as DPS and switch to healer, switch to gatherer, whatever you want at any point, as long as you're not actively engaged in combat. And that creates a lot of flexibility and options for you personally, but also for your group. Because maybe when you're fighting the smaller enemies, maybe you don't need 2 healers. Maybe one of your healers should go DPS and you can kill it faster. But when you come up against one of those rare enemies, maybe you want to have 2 or 3 healers or multiple tanks, and you can totally do that.
Yeah,
So
that
I think
flexibility is good.
yeah, I think it's going to a lot down the road too as they add to it. Presumably, they'll be able to create more variable situations to encourage
Yeah.
groups switching between jobs as the situation dictates.
That was going to be what I was going to add, is that because they introduced this as a system and not just a single dungeon or a single zone, they have the potential to keep adding more exploratory mission areas to it. So they have this cool system in place that lets you jump in with varied objectives and be able to switch your classes and all that, and then they can keep adding more and more in terms of the actual locales you visit and the monsters you fight and all that stuff.
Ooh, I wonder if they'll down the road maybe make a roulette of sorts. If we get multiple areas to explore, how cool would that be?
That would be cool. You know what I was actually thinking
sounds
about?
Like it actually sounds like the kind of content I've really found that game in desperate need of, because I'm not going to belabor the point, but I've said a million times that getting together to run a really hard dungeon and dying 5,000 times and grinding to get the gear to do it is not really my thing. But the idea of like going off and exploring an island and like, bringing like a botanist and a dark knight is neat. And it sounds a lot like, minus the randomization, it sounds a lot like the rifts in Diablo 3 that they've added. Because when you guys first explained it, I did actually think, I was like, oh, so it's a randomized set of islands. So that it's not randomized is both interesting and sort of sad to me. But I agree with you all. It sounds like there's a lot of room to expand that system, because that's the sort of adventuring stuff that I missed from leveling up. And I even think in Heavensward is a very solo expansion other than the dungeons and the bosses. Like, versus, like, I remember playing the vanilla game a lot when leveling, and it was a lot of, like, let's team up and do our hunting log. Let's team up and do this. Whereas I feel like it's mostly a single-player game until you have to go do a dungeon. Or, obviously if you're in a raiding party or playing that kind of content, it's obviously not a single-player game. But the stuff that I enjoyed was mostly single-player focused. So this sounds like it's sort of recreating the stuff that I missed a lot from the leveling experience of, this is like, we're going to go out and explore and find random stuff and weird stuff is going to happen. It's not quite so rigid as like, all right, parse your DPS, otherwise you're out of the group, that sort of thing. It sounds a little more, like you said, casual high-level content versus, very hardcore high-level content.
It's just nice to have more flexibility and objectives rather than saying, we're going to enter this dungeon, you all know the bosses, you all know the mechanics, make sure you execute flawlessly, the end.
Yeah, like that's the thing, is that's more of a memorization, which there's nothing wrong with that, and there's that Mega Man's a great series, and that's all memorization. I like the idea of this, where it's like, yeah, you go as a party to an unexplored island, and you all just dick around on the island and, do neat stuff. Like, that's
right.
Something that the game did not have.
I don't want to oversell it, because I think that it's not quite at that level yet with this mode. I don't think that it's the kind of thing where it's like, people who haven't played for a while are going to log in and be like, oh my god, I have this great new system that I'll never get tired of. It is... The content is fairly limited at this time. I just think that there's potential to add a lot more, and if they continue doing that, then that's going to be a lot more fun. Because I would agree that when I play Final Fantasy, I log in solo. I mean, I have 2 roommates, and they both play, but they're usually not... We have different schedules, so they're home at night. Or rather, I'm home during the day, and then they're home at night, and then we sort of aren't playing at the same time. Like I may have done my objectives already by the time they get home, and I don't want to rerun all the dungeons for very little to no reward. So this is the kind of thing that's easier to jump in and do, because normally what it is I log on by myself, I queue up for my roulettes or my dungeons or whatever I want to do, and then I log out. I don't really have that feeling of, hey, let's plan as a group what we're going to do. And it's most exciting to me when I'm chatting with people either online or, you know, my roommates in person. We'll go out to dinner, we'll have a talk, we'll be like, yeah, so did you do that dungeon, da 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 da, and then one of us will have an idea like, oh, you know what we should do? We should totally, you know, switch classes and we'll run this thing together. And then we get excited and then we jump in, and like that's the kind of content or the kind of mindset that I like to go into with content like the exploratory missions, because we get excited about what adventures will we have, what possibilities await, rather than saying, let's go home and run our rote dungeons, you know, like.
Yeah, like for me, exactly. That's how I like to play the game, because the other version, and again, not to down that, but it's more like work. It's like, all right, well, we have to master this content, and did you grind enough to keep up with the group? And you know, if not, you're holding us back.
Right.
You know, to me, it's work.
I love Final Fantasy XIV, but I would be lying if I didn't say that it's occasionally very intimidating, because when there's content that you haven't cleared yet that everybody is expected to know, going into a group is like, it's actually stressful. Because I've been trying to clear Ravana Extreme. He's one of the primals, the summons, and there's like an instance fight with 8 people. And if you don't know the mechanics to that fight, people just talk crap. And they're like, you're an idiot, what are you doing? You're weighing us down. And then you have that feeling of guilt, like, ugh, man, I'm sucking, I'm dragging everybody down. And then beyond that, if you're reasonable, you're like, this is a game. This is stupid. I don't want to feel like this.
Yeah, like I'm playing this to have fun. I'm sorry that I couldn't work as efficiently as you need the machine to be operating.
Yeah, so
but I feel like the design of the game sort of encourages that behavior, because it's sort of all or nothing.
Well,
yeah.
There's, I don't know. I would feel like there's varying different stages. Like even amongst us just here and some of the people that we're friends with on the game, we kind of represent all different levels. Like we have some friends who are pretty hardcore, and I don't know, I'm somewhere up there, but not quite. And then we, you know,
I'm
Steven,
probably a little bit below that, and then
you want
below that.
Definitely you want to play more for fun than, you know, to raid and to, you know, try and get loot and whatnot, and that's fine. And
yeah, well, like I like the idea of raiding. Like for me, I feel like the design of the game encourages farming, and there's nothing wrong with that inherently. But when you've encouraged farming in that way, and when the classes are structured the way they are, that's why people get so mad when you don't know the mechanics, because it's like, oh my god, you're throwing me off, because the only element is time at that point. Or if someone shows up who doesn't know the mechanic, they're mad because it's like, oh my god, now I have to spend longer on this content that I have to farm today.
Right.
Well, there's, you know, it's an MMO.
It also depends
you're gonna
on
have
people,
assholes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, well, there's also that. Like, you guys don't do that, but
No, yeah.
So there are pros and cons. So I think in the end what we're trying to say is that this new system, the exploratory mission system, is sort of a step in the right direction towards not having such rigidly defined goals in every single piece of content that we engage in.
I agree, and that sounds really exciting to me.
Yeah. I'm
It's good.
super excited about it too.
I haven't done the story either, so I want to see what happens with that. I've done everything else except for the story and then the new summon, which is a harder version of the previous story's final boss.
Yeah, it's basically, you know, the minstrel is telling the story of this boss fight and getting things way out of proportion in super epic fashion. And I have not even tried it yet, but I've heard it has lots of coil mechanics and is pretty crazy.
What they did for the final boss of A Realm Reborn, basically.
Yeah, same thing. So
It's good.
I don't know. I'm excited by the patch in general. I think there's plenty of different content, depending on, you know, what your priorities are in the game to keep you busy. I mean, some people, of course, are going to blow through it and probably already have blown through it. But
I think I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I already feel a little bit like I've exhausted everything in this patch. Like, yeah, I can certainly do more exploratory ventures, but it's like, okay. Because they didn't really add another tier of equipment level in this patch. It's all the same. They made it easier to get to that level, but it's all the same stuff. So it's kind of like, all right, well, I could grind for equipment, or I could just not grind.
I think the one thing that I'm not happy about is how the new dungeons now have become the expert roulette, and it's just those 2 dungeons. The old ones are now in their own roulette, which will get bigger as more dungeons get shuffled out of expert into it. But at the same time, my biggest issue with 3.0's expert roulette was it was just 2 dungeons. You had a 50 chance of getting one or the other, and it did get a little old after a while. And it's going to be the same thing with this now, unless, the next patch comes out sooner than 3.1 did, which it probably will because they took a little bit of a break. But still, I don't know.
It's a good patch overall.
It's good. It's very good. And after the awesomeness of 3.0 main Heavensward was, it's great to have more content. And so far, I think they're continuing in the trend of Heavensward, which was super freaking awesome. Yeah. So there's more awesome.
Agreed.
Yeah, they're on the up and up with that. I obviously don't play the game as much anymore, but I still have pretty warm regards for it in most ways.
I mean, really, it only gets better. I don't think they've added anything that people have reacted to in an overtly negative way. They're just adding more and more to a good game. Hi, Rob. Are you still there?
I'm sorry. Rob, I was sleeping.
Oh, God. He's such an asshole. Like,
remember when Derek participated in the Fallout conversation, but Rob can't be bothered to listen to Final Fantasy 14.
What am I gonna contribute? You guys love it.
Derek contributed to Fallout 4.
They continue to add things that you guys are interested in. That's awesome. Like, I think it's great that this subscription-based MMO has continued to have more and more content put into it that you guys are excited about. That's really cool. Again, it's not my cup of tea, but as someone who has always been fascinated by the Final Fantasy MMOs, it's really cool to see this phoenix rise up, and I mention it every time we talk about it, and they just continue to add new stuff to it. That's awesome. It ain't no Diablo 3, but what are you gonna do? You can't have perfection.
Which, I'm actually I'm back on that again. I'm playing it. I don't have Reaper of Souls for PC, which I really need to get because I know it's totally different. If I'm playing by myself, I want to play on PC, but I've been doing couch co-op with the PS4 version, and
it's pretty awesome.
Chugging along. It is, yeah. It works really well as a couch co-op game. I'm surprised.
Yeah, they seem to have figured it out. And
the shortcuts.
How did Rob get us on Diablo? That was
impressive. See how good I am?
Yeah, you are. Well, your portrait on Skype remains Diablo to this day.
It's the Diablo quotient of the podcast. You have to mention it at some point.
I'm glad that Final Fantasy 14 is a successful game. I think it should be the standard for the subscription-based MMO. I think even more than World of Warcraft, it's doing some really exciting things right now. And, those are the 2 subscription MMOs that have managed to survive.
There's actually something else that I should say as long as we're on the topic, and it's that Final Fantasy XI, yes, that one, received its final story update on the same day that Final Fantasy 14 updated. They've been having this story series called Rhapsodies of Vana'diel that's supposed to tie up all of the loose story ends in Final Fantasy XI that have been introduced over the years. It brings back all the characters from all the expansions. I'm not going to go back and play it because that game is now... They've done a lot to make it more accessible, but it is still esoteric to the point where it's really hard to even justify the time investment with a game like Final Fantasy XIV that's easier to get into. But,
did you use your 2-hour ability? Yes. Enjoy auto-attacking.
Right? I think they lowered those to half-hour abilities or something.
Oh, cool.
Oh, my sweet God.
But anyway, so they had their final update. They said that they're still going to have some updates from here on doing tweaks to the battle system or small battle content kind of things, but the story is done. They had a really climactic finale. Like I said, it brought together the characters from all the past expansions. I actually watched some of them, the cutscenes, because people have uploaded them on YouTube. And it looks really cool. I know that they recorded a finale chorus, the Rhapsodies of Vana'diel chorus, that actually had fans from all around the world sending in their voices to this chorus, and they compiled them and made them into a thing for the ending. It looks really cool.
Which is about the sweetest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's really heartfelt. I'm hoping that they release a digital EP with this music on it. I know that they just released a Blu-ray in Japan that has video montages of the journeys starting from all the city-states into the major hub area, Juno, and then it has a bunch of other music, and it closes out with the Rhapsodies of Vana'diel music that they've added. So I hope something like that comes here digitally because it would be a lot more accessible. But I think it's worth noting that Final Fantasy XI has been going strong since its release. It still has an active player base, a small one, but an active one. And I think it's neat that they care enough to close out the game's narrative in such a thoughtful way to their fans.
I was in middle school when that game came out.
Right?
Memories.
Yeah, I must have been too then, like 6th grade or so.
Also, just in
Game's
case,
even older than World of Warcraft.
just in case people were wondering, because there was a little bit of debate about whether or not how Fallout compares to Assassin's Creed. I can't remember if that was in the pre-show warm-up or not. So far, Fallout 4 has sold 12 million copies.
Okay, how many?
So
What
nice.
are the aggregate sales of all Assassin's Creed games?
Well, again, I would just, I don't know. All right, let's.
But really, 12 million?
Yep.
That sounds
That's
horribly
why that
inflated.
series is not going to change much.
That
I
sounds
know.
grossly inflated.
Yeah.
Seriously, 12 million?
That's
Let's research.
that's coming from The Escapist right now. Is that they hit 12 million.
Holy shit.
Assassin's Creed Unity reached 10 million combined everything. So I mean, obviously they're releasing a game every other year, but for 12
Right.
million in the first week and a half,
That's so many, though. Yeah.
and I think that's Steven's point, is that they're not going to change that much. And I personally find that to be a shame, but what do I know? I'm just somebody who likes video games.
Yeah, okay, Rob.
What? I mean, if the market reality is keep making these same games because that's what people want, I mean, they're going to continue to milk that teat for all it's worth.
Yeah, that's basically why I brought Assassin's Creed up, because that's
Right.
what Assassin's Creed does.
And then
so
you just-
cynical.
You hope that eventually you're going to see that. Well, I don't know if you hope for the tail, but you would expect to see a tail at some point. But
Do you think that people are getting sick of Call of Duty? Funnily,
I
I mean, I don't know how well the last one sold, but it seems like it wasn't received as well critically, and that seems to be on the downward trend.
I don't have a feel for it.
I guess I
mean,
don't care enough to really
wish-
keep up with it, but
I think they still keep selling quite well. I mean, I don't think they're going anywhere. Like, even if they make a couple million sales each one, I'm sure that's worth the money they put in.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to belabor the point on Fallout, but I just, that game is going to sell a lot, just like Skyrim sold a lot, so they have a winning formula. It's just a question of, do the consumers eventually want something new? And, sometimes consumers adamantly say they want something new, and other times they don't. To bring it back to Diablo, you had a lot of consumers saying that they just wanted Diablo 2 again. You had a lot of consumers really pissed off about the fact that they were making changes.
Yeah, they need to make. I prefer changes. I don't need to play Diablo 2 again, and that applies to a lot of my favorite games.
And that's
Like, I love them, but I don't need to play them over and over again anymore.
And that's what Kyle said on the boards, on our editors' boards about Fallout when I was describing my time with it, which was, I've played Fallout, and playing more Fallout was okay to a point, but I have very little desire to play more Fallout 4. Like, I kind of reached a point where I finished it, and I was like, okay, I'm good.
I guess I'll play it at some point.
I've been playing Apollo
I'm-
Justice.
I'm playing it right now. Oh, well, not that.
I wish you were.
Apollo Justice is pretty
I
good.
know. I gotta get on playing the entire series. I'm sorry.
Just, just remember, don't go in expecting an accurate portrayal of the law.
I
Yeah,
I know. That's
I
gonna be the
love how
hardest
you-
thing for me.
You said that on the last podcast, and I'm like, did you really expect Law and Order when you played an anime?
Well, Law and Order is
Law
not
and Order is
an
also
accurate portrayal
not,
of the law
yeah.
either.
Okay, I know, but like, were you really expecting to have like this amazing insight into the criminal justice system?
No.
I was expecting it to follow the rules a little bit. Phoenix Wright is like, hey, this girl magically turned into somebody else, and she murdered somebody. Is she guilty? And I'm like, God, is she guilty?
So you're
like-
expecting some level of Sherlock, is what you're telling me.
So prior to playing the series, I was not expecting there to be as much magic
Okay.
as there was.
Well-
Because I'm like, law itself is fairly unique in games. So for it to be a comedy, drama, law, magical fusion, no, I was not expecting that.
I hope when we get the gritty reboot of Phoenix Wright, where he's like a down on his luck single dad trying to support
That's
his.
Apollo Justice.
Okay, whatever. But when,
Yeah, that actually is Apollo Justice.
well, let's do the gritty reboot. I'm sure that we'll have a much more in-depth take on the criminal justice system. It's like when Batman has to show up for police brutality cases.
I haven't played 5, but apparently 5 is more like reflective on like actual Justice. I haven't played it yet, but apparently 5 does get a little grim. But I don't know. Apollo is a weird beast because it's like they spend the whole first part of the game making you very disappointed in Phoenix, and like to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, how did he fall so far? And like you're like just like Apollo, who is a lawyer, a next generation lawyer who grew up being inspired by Phoenix Wright. The player and Apollo are both sort of like, what the hell is wrong with you, Phoenix? Stop it! And like they, it's paced a little weirdly, but they also have some of their best trial gameplay they've had, and like their best like look around and find clues gameplay. It's very logical in most places. I don't know how I feel about it yet. I'm about halfway through the game. I'm through 2 of the 4 cases, and usually these games tend to be important case, somewhat related case, filler case, finale, and the finale is usually Crazy Pants.
Crazy Pants.
But it, it's a really interesting departure. I could see why fans were shocked by it because it goes to a lot of lengths to make you aware that you are not playing the same Phoenix Wright anymore.
The same Daddy's Phoenix Wright.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Sorry, Caitlin. Sorry, I didn't mean to get there faster than you.
But
totally fine.
It's really interesting, and it's sort of like because the first trilogy wraps up really tightly. This is the first one that appeared on a touchscreen enabled system because the original Phoenix Wrights were all Game Boy Advance games before they came here. So like there's like 3-dimensional like you look at objects in 3 dimensions to find like fingerprints, or like you'll open like a cell phone cover and find like a business card or something. And so it's actually there's a lot of like it's a little more adventure gamey than the other ones, which were more visual novels with items occasionally. This one feels a little more adventure gamey, and the flow of the gameplay is tighter than it's ever been. I really like that. And like Apollo himself at first seems like Diet Phoenix, but he's actually a very different character.
Diet Phoenix.
And that's what's made the game so interesting to me is like you really have this like Fallout. Apollo is sort of like really put out at the beginning. These things happen that sort of shake up his life. He's like this young lawyer who has these like dreams of justice, and then like he meets Phoenix, and Phoenix is just this like terrible person basically who's like manipulating people and like doing all these things that you're disappointed in.
Oh, so it's like one is before going to law school and the other is after going to law school.
Yeah, kind of, but like Phoenix is like this paragon of rightness and the truth, and that's the whole point of the original trilogy. But then you're playing this, and like the narrative is so engaging. Like obviously there's the fillery stuff that's sort of in all the Phoenix Wright games that sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a little tedious. But the overarching mystery is just so interesting because Apollo himself is a fun character who's a little more sarcastic than Phoenix, and Phoenix is pretty sarcastic in the old ones. But there's just this whole thing of like you're so disappointed that you get here, and there are so few games that I think are willing to make this like amazing hero seem like like a person who has made bad choices and that you're disappointed in. Like so many games do the Cloud hero worship of Cloud is always going to be right in the end of the day. Like look at Advent Children. Advent Children is like Cloud was bad for a while, or maybe not so good. Oh, never mind, Cloud's the hero, right? And I'm sure this game is going to end with vindicating Phoenix, but it's really good to have an experience that's a little darker and a little like it's kind of depressing. Everyone in the game is sort of like dejected and it has the humor, but like everyone's sort of disappointed with how things played out, and that's interesting to me.
It might sound weird, Steven, but when I first played Phoenix Wright, since I knew you, I just immediately picture you as Phoenix Wright all the time. Like kind of goofy, like has this strong moral belief, but the world's just gonna smash him and bring him down at some point. Like I don't know, you've just always struck me as a Phoenix Wright. I don't know. Maybe we should come up with video game characters for each of the podcast crew at some point.
That would be fun. Maybe the listeners would do that for us.
I'm actually not that averse to being referred to as Phoenix Wright.
I think you're
Phoenix Wright is cool.
I think you're Phoenix Wright. I'd say I'm Artorias of the Abyss. I think that.
You just get angry and do backflips on people?
Yeah, that's pretty much. I've been swallowed up by the abyss of negativity. I think that's fairly accurate.
Oh, Rob.
Derek, fighting you is a lot of fun.
Derek, you're Red 13.
What?
I don't know. I wanted somebody to be Red 13.
Are you saying I'm a furry or?
No, I'm not saying you're a furry, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just.
I'm not.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. There's
Okay.
nothing wrong with that, but
No,
I'm not.
no.
Rob, if you don't say I'm Chie from Persona 4, then
I'd be afraid of not
Disown
saying
you.
you're Chie.
Oh, that's
I think
bitchin'.
I think you would
That's a
just
good
kick my
choice.
ass.
No, that's right. I'm Junpei. That's right. That's who I want to be.
You're Junpei.
Hey,
Dun, dun, dun,
Junpei.
dun.
Hey, Yuki-tan.
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Hey.
Peter, I posted a picture of myself, and Peter, one of our other editors, is on the show. He's on there. You guys know who Peter is. He told me I look just like Junpei in the picture, and I was like, that's the nicest thing anybody has said to me. Oh.
But I don't have the heart to tell you what's going to happen to Chidori.
Mm.
That game is like 10 years old.
I know.
I'm
Anywho,
still trying to beat it. I got sidetracked.
I don't think I'm ever gonna beat 3. I don't think I can.
You should really beat 3. I actually think 3 has a better ending than 4.
I know.
I agree.
I got to almost the exact same point. I'm having the same problem I had with Okami, where like I got way to the end, and well,
Okami goes on way too long.
Okami just needs to end.
Okami needed the fat to be trimmed a little
Oh,
bit.
that is terrible to be sick. So I'm still coughing. We ready to talk about news? Coughing. We ready to talk about news?
Yeah, the giant dump Nintendo took on our chest.
Well, the giant
Nintendo,
awesome that they took on our chest.
Yes.
What a direct that
That
was.
sounded awful. Yeah.
Ca-
I'm not even a
Nintendo-
huge Nintendo fan.
I want to, first of all, Iwata, rest in peace, that wonderful man. I just want to, like, imagine that at Nintendo, they were like, all right, we're all really bummed out. Iwata's the man. We're going to take a break from Nintendo Direct. And they did. And then they were like, wait a minute. We're all about giving people joy. How can we do that? And they were like, oh, let's do everything they've ever wanted. They were like, here's not one, but 2 Dragon Quest games.
I got my Dragon Quest 7. There is a God. Somebody has listened to me.
Now Rob will agree with us when we say Square is actually picking it up a little bit.
They are. I'm very excited because I finally get to play Dragon Quest 7. It's gonna really suck when I don't like it, but at least
I know. We're
but
never
at
going to
least
hear
I
the
get
end
to
of it.
play it.
Rob's going to be like, this game has turn-based combat, and it's just so slow.
There is slow turn-based combat in some games, and then there's good turn-based combat. Okay, I can't help it. You guys like
Anyway.
slow? I mean, you guys, we all talked about that with Radiant Historia. That game's way too slow.
No, it is. Like, I love Radiant Historia, but the game is slow. But, like, there's a difference between slow and boring.
Yeah, I'm okay with slow. I mean, I like Trails in the Sky, and that has combat that's hella slow.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing. It just it depends on a million factors. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't
What are
think
the other
slow-
systems? Like, I think that the reason why Radiant Historia's combat doesn't resonate with me is because it's based around positioning, but you fight the same enemy encounters, and you have to sort of continue the same behavior to push them into the same spot, to use the same ability to hit all of them at once, and it's like it's very.
There's never any variance. Like,
Yeah.
every battle in that game plays out the same way. Knock them into a square and then kill them all in one hit. Or take forever.
Yeah, I would agree with all that.
Like, again, I still love that game, but not because of its combat, I would say.
So yeah, Dragon Quest 7 and 8 are coming to 3DSs in America. There was much rejoicing. Everybody was happy. Mother 3 in Japan. Does that mean we're going to get Mother 3 in America?
I think at this, I know there's a lot of hand-wringing as to whether or not we will, but there's an existing translation. They may not use it, but I would be shocked if at some point Mother 3 was not released on the Virtual Console here with a translation. They released Mother 1, and that didn't have a translation, and is, I think, widely regarded as the worst game in the Mother series. Worst, relatively speaking.
You think it is?
Well, I feel like that's the reputation it seems to have, is that it's interesting but very grindy and sort of has aged poorly, versus Earthbound, which is a perennial classic, and Mother 3, which seems to be warmly regarded.
Apparently my brain just didn't compute. I thought you said Mother 3 was the worst. I was like, what? No, I think you're right.
Yeah, and I definitely hope we see Mother 3, because reasons. People want it, and Nintendo is doing what people want. The trend seems to be do what people want. And
I mean, with this direct, yeah.
Yep.
I'm definitely skirting around the one story I want to talk about because I want us to talk about everything else first before I just delete myself off the internet.
Oh my god.
We need to save that, like they did in the direct for the grand finale, I think.
Correct.
So we got
Paper Jam.
Linkle. We got
Linkle.
Linkle.
Great character, weird name.
Yeah,
Stupid
horrible name. But can I just say again, they teased their Legend of Zelda on Wii U, but we all know it's going to come to whatever the other console is too at some point. I think that's fair. I still think that Link looks like a girl, and I still think they're being really cagey about it.
I don't think that Link looks like a girl. Because they've said Linkle is like a fan of Link, so she's not just like a female version of Link, so there won't be Zelda, the male Zelda. But like,
Be amazing though.
it would be cool if they found a way to let you say, "Hey, I want to play as dude Link or girl Link." But like, I don't think Linkle is going to be that character just because it's a different person, unless they do make it that somehow. I don't know. Maybe they'll like have it like a Fallout thing where they both have different backgrounds. Like Link is like an elf boy and Linkle is his fan from town or something. I don't know. I just wish her name wasn't Linkle.
I'm fine with it. I just think that they still continue to show that character at long distances. When they show him or her, I get a much more feminine quality. Maybe that's the new art design. Whatever. I still think it's going to turn out that at the very least you can design Link as a girl in the new Zelda, and I'm totally fine with that. I think that's awesome. Twilight, worst kept secret in the industry. Twilight.
Yeah.
HD. I love Twilight Princess. I don't understand the hate for that game except for revisionist history. Oh, it's too much like Ocarina of Time, which is what you all asked for. And
I'm looking forward to playing it actually. To like, because I got pretty far in it on the Wii, but I'm looking forward to playing it again.
I think
and, like, really
I think the
finishing it.
dungeons for the most part are better than Wind Waker. And I think now I did make mention of this, and Andrew kind of said that he was not a big fan of remakes in general, and I kind of agree with him. I wish that they would go a little bit farther with these remakes instead of just doing like up-resed HD versions. I would love to see like a Resident Evil remake situation, which would obviously cost way more money, but I don't know. I think it was time to fix some of the problems in Wind Waker, and they didn't really do all of it.
They made sailing fast. They made a fair number of changes. They didn't change the game, but they definitely didn't just release it without doing anything.
Right, and it's not enough to get me interested to play it again, but of course it made a lot of people interested. I'm interested to see what they're going to change in Twilight Princess. I thought Twilight Princess was phenomenal. I really like that game, but again, I think there's a lot of revisionist history on that title to go from being one of the most beloved reincarnation of the Lord Jesus Christ games ever to then a couple years later people are like, well, it's really similar to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, because nobody asked for that. They did in fact ask for that.
They did in fact ask for that repeatedly.
I'm just pandering to Caitlin now.
So yeah, that's coming.
Yes. Because Deus Ex, I can't wait for it.
Dude,
oh man, that looks great.
You want to talk about a game that looks like it's making huge advances after complaining about Fallout? That game looks nuts. That game looks absolutely insane.
Yes.
And I'm on board for that. I really hope that turns out to be something special.
I gotta say,
Mario and Luigi
playing Human Revolution for retro, I still love the game and I still think it's great, but compared to like what we've seen from Mankind Divided, I'm like, wow, this does actually look kind of shitty in comparison.
It has aged roughly, but I think that the new one looks great. Speaking of things that I'm interested in but disappointed that there's no Paper Luigi, Mario Luigi Paper Jam got a release date.
Cool.
We actually got a lot of release dates in this direct, which was awesome.
We got the new Fire Emblem and the packaging details on that, which are pretty smart, I would say, to give you kind of everything for $80 if you want the two versions of the game and then the downloadable final episode.
Yeah, but that's the special edition is $80.
Right.
Which I find weird because normally we don't know how much the third path is going to cost, but if it costs
$20.
Right, so that means that the special edition that has a few extra things will be the exact same cost as if you bought one of the paths and then bought the other one and the third one later, because they'll both be $80.
But isn't it?
I think that's intentional.
40? Are the games not $40 or are
The
they?
game's 40, but then when you beat it, you can buy the other campaign at a discounted price of 20, and then the third campaign is 20
Okay.
again.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I have no problem with it. I mean, it gives
But
me
you
a
get,
reason.
I mean, you get a pouch and an art book, which I guess is the justification.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's nice actually. It's kind of cool. We get a special edition that if you're going to get all 3 pats is actually the best deal. It's not on $30 more expensive.
I'd want a Merce. I think it'd be awesome if it came with a Merce. I think I'm gonna give that game a shot, and
I'm definitely going to, yeah.
and I'm either gonna play it on hard without permadeath, or I'm just gonna play it on normal and say screw it. I've said it a million times, but I think it's weird that people play that game with permadeath, but then restart missions over and over again. Isn't that? I still think that the point of having decisions in video games these days is to deal with them. And ever since I've taken that approach to my gaming, I did it with Fallout, where like I made some bad decisions and I kept going, and I've found that to be far more freeing than the I'm going to save scum games. And I don't know.
But I think the option is there for that reason. Like,
Yes,
I agree with that
yes.
logic, but I still prefer to play classic with permadeath. And yeah, I'm going to restart if I die, but I like that stress. I don't want the game to be impossible, a la my oft-referenced lunatic run of Awakening, which resulted in me getting 4 levels in. But for me, it adds to the intensity of the strategy. Like, yeah, I restarted, but
How do
you have to look at it this way. If I know I have the crutch of being able to just keep going, then I'm going to, and that's going to make it less of an impact when I win a battle.
So let me make this argument. Haven't other tactical role-playing games figured out how to handle permadeath better? Didn't Final Fantasy Tactics do it better by giving you a couple of turns to save your party members? Didn't Valkyria Chronicles do it better by making sure that the opponents do not get to your party members, because that's when they will die for good? I just feel like other games. I feel like other games have done it better, and Fire Emblem is kind of stuck in the past on that mechanic a little bit.
I wouldn't say better, because what you're suggesting sounds like we should just homogenize everything. Like, it's a different system.
No,
yeah, I prefer, the idea of like, oh, your party member went down, so if you can raise them in time. I like that mechanic, but that's not Fire Emblem. And Fire Emblem has found a better way to do it for people who don't like it, in that they just got rid of permadeath and they gave you a mode.
I feel like
Fire Emblem also has like that randomizer thing going on where you have a 99% chance of hitting and you've missed, or they have a 5% chance of hitting and they hit you, which can make permadeath feel a little bit more unfair.
And that game also so 2 things I want to kind of challenge you on here, Stephen, a little bit. One, that game does, at least Awakening, did a really nasty thing of like in the middle of battle having a new army show up, which would somehow show up at seemingly the worst places sometimes, to where it was going to force a restart, because it's like, oh, that army just showed up behind me and wiped out one of my characters. I had no idea they were coming. Restart. And also, I don't agree with your homogenization argument. I think that they could come up with a better system, because other games have done it better. Like, you still have
But I think that's a qualitative statement, though.
Would you let me? What do you mean by it's a qualitative statement?
You're saying better. There are people who like the permadeath. So from your perspective, something different would be better. You're not asking for better. You're asking for different. Like, as an example, like if someone said, okay, now in Fire Emblem, your character dies, but if you do something in battle before it's too late, you get them back. Would you find that better?
I think there is a way to handle this mechanic better than with the randomness that's coming from their encounter design, and also from the random number generator that Caitlin's saying. I think they can do better, and relying on an old system with new mechanics, it doesn't gel as well as it could. And that's a little frustrating for me. And it made me pull my hair out to the point where I gave up on Awakening. And you're right, they've kept the option in so that I can play that game the way I want to. Excuse me. And that's fine. But I find that their new mechanics are not gelling with their old school game design, and that I find problematic. If you want to call that homogenization, I'm not asking for them to necessarily put the countdown timer from Final Fantasy Tactics, but I know the new XCOM managed to pull off the randomness of sometimes a critical hit will automatically kill one of your characters. Maybe that's what they need, but I think it's a bit much to have a game that suddenly throws new enemies in the middle of their encounter, and you either have to anticipate that or get lucky in order to deal with their permadeath.
Well, I agree that can be frustrating, but that's also part of the Fire Emblem experience. And if you change that, you're changing
fine.
Fire Emblem.
And that's fine, but I think sometimes I think that's how we end up with some like, oh well, that's why we have to have the tank controls in Resident Evil, and we should never go back. I think that's how you end up with some of that. I think you can do better.
There are ways to make it flow better, but I am still a proponent of the tank controls.
I'm fine with the tank controls, but again, I think that you can do them better. I think you can make sure that your camera angles are better. I think that you can make it so that it's a little bit more intuitive. I think the Resident Evil remake has great controls, even though they're tank controls. They feel better. There's a natural flow to them. They improved them. But I think that just...
that I agree with. You can improve them.
That's what I'm trying to say is, okay, you don't necessarily have to do the exact same mechanics as other games, but I think they can do something a little better. But whatever, I'm not going to play in that mode because I don't understand why people play in that mode. And that's just me, I don't know, understanding myself as a gamer and understanding what I want. It's cool we're getting Fire Emblem. I'm okay with that.
In that Fire Emblem, I can be a dude and date a dude.
You don't think they're going to take that out?
No. Why would they?
Why would they?
No.
Why has Nintendo taken out religious imagery in the past, guys? Don't sit there and give me that crap.
Oh, well, okay. You're talking about a completely different time period, too. The 90s...
They still take out religious imagery. It took them years to get The Binding of Isaac onto 3DS, and they're still cagey as hell about it.
Did they change anything in that?
I don't know, necessarily, but it took forever for them to finally get it out.
But that wasn't religious imagery. That was corporate nonsense, and, like, we want you to change the game, and they refuse to change it. So... that's different.
I don't know. I don't even know what we're arguing now, guys. Like, I really don't. Like,
I don't know why you're arguing it. I think that I think the backlash they would face for removing the option to have a gay romance in this game would be tremendous. Like, for them to go in. Also, I don't think they're going to change the code to do that. I don't know. No, I don't think they're going to do that.
They're changing the boob slider on Xenochronicles X, guys.
The backlash to that has been stupid because it's been all the damn anime avatars on Twitter. Like,
yep.
But you guys, all right, guys. I'm getting a.
What I'm saying is that local.
So you're comparing an option to romance somebody of the same gender to being able to control the bust size of an underage female character.
When you say okay, that's a little bit of an attack. When you say it like that, you somehow seem to imply that I am equating a homosexual relationship to the bust size of a character. No, what I'm saying is that they completely avoided a sexualized topic in their video game the same way that Nintendo has avoided religious imagery in their video games in the West. It would not surprise me if Nintendo, and you guys know me, you know I don't agree with this, I don't have a problem with it, but it would not surprise me if Nintendo did the same thing in this instance.
I don't think that romance is equated to sexuality.
To
physical sexuality.
Derek, we're saying the same thing.
I didn't say that you did.
We're agreeing with each other, but it would not surprise me if Nintendo saw that they were different or saw that they were the same.
I don't agree with that, and I think it's because there's enough nuance there. The people localizing this, there's a lot of discussion of like culturalization and localization of games, and you have to look at the cultural climate into which you're releasing something. And the fact is that in the United States, and especially in the United States, where Xenoblade is about to come out, people look at the impact of a very young girl in a very revealing outfit and making her boobs huge very differently from how it's viewed in Japan. So they are culturalizing the game. Some people are calling that censorship, and they can, and I don't care what they think. But that's a different thing than going into the game and saying, like, it's an awareness of cultural trends. Getting rid of the boob slider is something that is going to draw... People are going to look at that in the U.S. and find that a lot stranger than people in Japan look at it. And it's a lot more objectionable in the U.S., and that's going to affect the ratings. And that's what they're doing, is they're going for ratings. That's going to affect the ESRB rating for the game. If there is an underage girl with a revealing swimsuit and you can give her size 55 Gs, then that's going to get the game a different rating.
Is having a homosexual relationship, could that also change the rating on a game?
That is not going to affect the rating.
Or should. No.
Again, I agree with you, but the ESRB is their own funded institution. It's something that is made up of a bunch of people that are playing the games. If they decide to suddenly have a problem with that,
I don't think there's a precedent for that either, though. I don't think there's ever been an instance of the ESRB specifically saying, like, everything was fine until this point, until it got gay, so now we have to up the rating.
You phrased
I mean,
that really well.
I just think that's
Until
kind
it
of
got gay.
absurd. Like,
Like,
I'm not
look,
I'm not saying that your concerns that you're raising are absurd. Like, I'm not dismissing your argument, Rob. I just think that it would be absurd if they did that.
and I think
Inquisition. Like Inquisition, like if you look at the ESRB rating for Inquisition, there's nothing on there that says this game is rated M for blood, romance, sex, and gay people.
And gay.
no, sex is actually included. Now, I agree with you. They're not using homosexuality as a moniker on their game, but what all are they including in sexuality? And if the people who are deciding that do feel that that constitutes a mature rating, there's nothing to be done. I mean, the ESRB is much like the MPAA when it comes to the Motion Picture Association. They get to make the determining factor about what constitutes a PG-13 and what constitutes an R, and sometimes it doesn't make sense.
But they are in conversations with this, and they're in conversation with social trends, and nobody at the ESRB is going to go, well, there's gay people in this, so we got to get rid of it.
I mean, didn't they change the age of one of the characters in Fire Emblem Awakening?
Oh, they changed.
And Xenoblade.
Yeah, Lynn, a character in Xenoblade X, is 13 in the Japanese version. She's 15 in the English version.
Which makes such a difference.
I agree with you guys that it's silly, and I think we all have to be on the same page. Is like I'm not sitting here saying that this title should have its gay content taken out, but it would not surprise me.
And that's for me. That's the position I'm taking issue with. Is that is not the same thing as a boob slider. Like that is like that is not like. There are people to whom that is an offensive element, but those people are wrong, and B, that's a different thing than saying here's a 12-year-old girl, she has giant boobs because that's what you want to look at. That's a different thing.
And I agree with you. I see a difference in those two things as well.
And there's no precedent for you to think what you're thinking, is what I mean. Like there have been games with homosexual romances, and they have never been their own bullet point, and that would be foolish anyway. Sexuality is just a blanket term.
What Nintendo game has had homosexual relationships?
Fire Emblem.
Besides the new Fire Emblem that has not been released in America yet.
I mean, there are probably games that have had maybe not overt elements. I mean, you're putting us on the spot, and I'm not saying that you're doing it to be a jerk about it, but I can't think of anything. I could research and come back to you.
Yeah, and maybe there is a game, and again, I'm not. I appreciate that. I'm not trying to gotcha media right now, but what I'm saying is that Nintendo has been really cagey about some of these things in the past.
I don't know. Tomodachi Life, I guess, is an example, and they messed up with that, and then I think Tomodachi Life was actually kind of a notable turning point for Nintendo because they realized that it's not really appropriate, in today's cultural climate to sort of like restrict the expression of, if you're going to make a game that is purely about fostering relationships between people, to completely erase the existence of a subset of people is problematic. So like, I think that they learned enough from that they wouldn't erase it from Fire Emblem. I think that's a good enough reason for them from a business standpoint, because they had a lot of outcry over Tomodachi Life.
I think they are smart enough to know that, and furthermore, homosexuality is looked at even worse in Japan than it is in the United States.
That's a good point.
And then put it in and take it out in the U.S.
Like the fact that it even exists in the game to begin with is nothing short of amazing. So
okay,
I did not mean to open this can of worms. I was just trying.
No. I want to have this discussion, but we have a lot of history of Nintendo doing some weird stuff. I really hope that you guys are right and that we have no issues, but I want to watch this development of Fire Emblem because that I think we all are in agreement that if they do make a change, we're going to hear about it pretty damn fast, and you're gonna have articles out the yin yang and people losing their minds over this sort of thing. So I really hope that it doesn't happen.
I agree with your that would happen, but I think that is discussing a very, very unlikely given context circumstance.
Well, let's see what they do. Nintendo's.
I also think it would be a different kind of outrage.
And for the record, just one final thing to add: you can also be a girl who dates a girl. I didn't mean to erase that in the discussion.
No, no, no.
So,
And again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm advocating that anyone should have a problem with this. That's not what I'm saying, but I do not find this to be as cut and dry as y'all seem to think. And I really hope I'm wrong. But
Well, think of it as a taste thing. Like we censor certain kinds of media. Child pornography is illegal, and that is why that is being removed from the game. But especially now, there are strides being made to not erasing people from existence. Yeah, there are people who want child porn, but that is not something socially acceptable right now. And the frame we live in, Nintendo knows, and this is the correct frame to be in, that they should not be erasing homosexual romances from the game, because that's not currently, in the current social climate, that is no longer acceptable, and that's a good thing. That's progress. But it's like comparing an entire set of humans to a boob slider is, I think, too reductive of an argument. To use one as the example for another is what I mean. Like, someone's bathing suit is not someone's life.
quote: "Someone's bathing suit is not someone's life." I agree.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry, Rob. I mean, it's hard, particularly to have this kind of discussion when people like us deal with this all the time. I mean, a huge amount of my time in academia has been focused on gender studies, and like my focus within linguistics is linguistic construction of identity and sexuality, and like it's super important to me. So obviously, I get emotionally invested in this kind of stuff. So I mean, I
right.
didn't mean to.
And this is where I always have trouble with these arguments, is because you could make the argument that I'm just being a devil's advocate dick over here, but I think that saying that this is not a conversation that they're okay, that's not fair because nobody made that statement, but I think this is definitely a conversation that's going on in Nintendo right now. And I really hope Nintendo is on the right side of it and everyone's going, this isn't a big deal. Like, but I think that there is a conversation going on there.
Well, I mean, yeah, they had to talk about it, I'm sure. At the point where they're localizing this game and they encounter this scene, they have to talk about, like, how are we going to handle this?
Right.
Because I think that it's not existing in a vacuum. Nothing is. So they're not just translating it word for word. Because as we know, especially like Steven knows especially well, that translation and localization isn't just as simple as, like, one-to-one translation doesn't exist. That's something you learn very early on if you decide to study a foreign language. And so all the people who complain about, like, why is this game taking so long to be localized, just run it through Google Translate. Like, I know that's a very hyperbolic statement, but like that's not how translation works. So when we encounter something like this, particularly a scene that is handling a culturally sensitive issue, we have the people doing it are aware of everything that's happening in the social discourse. So, like, yes, they are talking about it, but I want to think that they're coming from a pretty informed perspective. Like, again, the people at Nintendo have seen what Tomodachi Life did. So
I think the important thing to say here is that the only thing that we were talking about was that Nintendo in the past has avoided hot button issues, religion, sexuality, that sort of thing. And the only question I was trying to raise was, are they going to potentially avoid this issue? I'd like to think that they're not, because there's nothing wrong with analyzing this issue. And you guys have brought up good points that they are issues that in Japan that they haven't been seen as issues, and we're talking about a more controversial region when it comes to some of these topics. So the hope is that they're not going to be problems and or taken out or changed in any way to try to sanitize them in that really negative way, that really negative idea of like, oh well, we're gonna fix this for American audiences. The only question I was trying to raise was, do we think that's going to happen? I think the emphatic answer from everybody is no, and they shouldn't. And I think we all agree on that. And I was only asking the question just because of the precedents from the historical standpoint of Nintendo changing these things in the past. All the way back to Golgo
I
13.
mean, I think it's a valid point to raise, and I think we reached a good conclusion.
Yeah, again, I hope it's not an issue. I hope that there's nothing here. We'll find out in February when we get Fire Emblem Conquest Birthright, and what's the last one?
Revelations.
Seriously?
Not to be confused with Resident Evil Revelations.
Or Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Well, the way they describe the third path vis-a-vis the first two makes it that I can see how that kind of fits in.
Fire Emblem Shadow of the Revelations.
Rise of the Fire Emblem.
Chronicles X.
Excuse you.
Chronicles.
Oh,
Is it Xenoblade Chronicles Cross
EX
or is it
EX
X?
Turbo Plus Alpha?
Is it Chronicles X?
The answer is it's Cross in Japan and it's
Yes.
X here in the States.
That's even
but,
more
yeah.
awesome. That's even more.
It's stylized the same way, but Japan has got this kind of thing where sometimes they just write X and they write it out as Cross because
It's
they
like
don't have X, obviously, in their language.
W
so.
being double.
Yeah, so it's weird, and I'm weird because I like Cross. I think it sounds better than X, but I think Xenoblade Chronicles X sounds like Mystery Brand X. Like,
Does Caitlin agree with me on the naming of Xenoblade Chronicles X? I'm gonna have you on the show more, Caitlin.
I think
I had everybody yell at me at E3 2 years ago when I was just like, that title sounds terrible.
I don't call it Chronicles like outside of official stuff for the site because I hate that edition. Xenoblade is fine by itself, and I don't know. I like Cross because you can shorten it to Xenocross, which sounds cool in my mind.
I think it should have been Xenoblade Chronicles Shadow of the Revelations X. Cross.
That's coming next year on the
Yes.
NX.
Well, I don't think we have any other news to talk about. I think everything else is past. Nothing.
But wait,
wait.
Oh,
a new
no.
challenger approaches.
Nope. They didn't.
To be fair, I think I lagged. To be fair, Xenoblade was just called Xenoblade in Japan. So Xenoblade Chronicles is in fact a new name in Japan. The
What?
X part is a little silly, but for us it's just like, oh, I added an X, that's dumb. Although they did it with Mega Man, it was awesome. But like in Japan, the game is not like there's Xenoblade and Xenoblade Chronicles, so I don't know. That's probably the perspective from which they were naming it.
I don't think we have any other news to talk about. I think we're done, right?
No,
don't-
I
I
can't
don't
think
know,
of anything.
unless-
Like, wait, does a storm gather on the horizon?
It looks like some.
Is there a squall?
No.
No cloud, no squall shall hinder us, okay?
Yeah, there ain't no squall, because if there was, the whole internet would have given a collective eh.
Rob is making me censor a bad word I said because people would have said WTF about squall.
But
They
instead,
would not have said meh.
we got Cloud in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and for 3DS, which I gotta say that was pretty cool to have the music and to have Midgar in the background to do the thing with Cloud sitting on the ground, and was it Zelda over him like reenacting the
There was a bunch of Pikmin that looked like the flower bed, and then there was Zelda holding the flower item
okay,
in a pink costume.
that was pretty awesome. Also, it took the internet a grand total of about 12 hours to start putting out clickbait articles of is Final Fantasy VII Remake coming to the Took 12 hours, guys. Took 12 hours.
If you think that the Wii U can run the
Oh, it ain't
remake,
It ain't
It's coming. I would be shocked if it doesn't come to NX.
It's gonna
because it's
come
coming to Xbox One.
It's going to come to NX, but it just took 12 hours for the clickbait articles to start about, Final Fantasy VII Remake and whether or not that's coming to the Nintendo NX. And also, it was cool to see Cloud. It was cool to have the music. I like the fact that it was just the straight-up Final Fantasy VII music, which was great. Looks good. They've done a lot of really good integration there. It is a little weird that it is Cloud, not because he's like one of the most popular Final Fantasy characters, but that is the famous break point between Nintendo and Squaresoft from way back in the day.
I think at this point, Smash is not Nintendo All-Stars. Smash is video game the celebration.
Which is awesome. They need to bring Snake back.
Like,
Big
Smash
boss.
has Mega Man, Pac-Man, Mario, Sonic, and Cloud.
You think?
And then everyone else, too.
Can we get Blinks the Time Cat from Xbox? Can we get him in there?
I don't think so.
Or,
How about, what would be a good Xbox representative? Like Hayabusa from Ninja Gaiden?
how about we get Joel in there and he could just like put Sonic into a sleeper hold and just choke the life out of him and then like grab him?
His final smash will be him blasting somebody in the face with the shotgun before it cuts to black and an audience cheers.
or
I think,
how about Donut
I think
Drake?
the Xbox rep would be Banjo-Kazooie.
Ooh.
Donut Drake, yeah. that'd be
Donut
good.
Drake, yeah.
It rolls over the competition. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh God. So yeah, Cloud's in Smash Brothers. When's he coming to Smash Brothers?
They haven't said, but there's a Nintendo Direct in December focused specifically on Smash, and if precedent holds, he will probably release immediately after that Direct with 2 other characters.
All right, I think everybody's excited to see Cloud, and apparently Uematsu's not doing the music for the Final Fantasy VII remake. That's concern
Or
number
has not been approached yet.
That's concern number one.
I want
I
it
don't
to
think
be.
that's a concern.
I want it to be Hamauzu, although I don't know that his style would mesh as
Yes.
well. But Hamauzu is one of my favorite composers now.
Oh, I think it would be
Everything he
perfect.
touches is gold.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I don't think Uematsu being involved with it has anything to do with it. A, because I doubt they're even doing any music yet, and B,
Yeah.
all the melodies are written, and Uematsu writes great melodies. Uematsu does not do great instrumentation, in my opinion.
That is fair. I think that's
Yeah.
very fair.
I'll agree
Like,
with
I
that.
really don't need a metal version of One Winged Angel. Like,
But
we got that.
But you
Like,
could
we
use.
don't need the Lost Odyssey ending or final boss theme again. Like, and again, Uematsu is worthy of respect, but I do not think it matters. I actually sort of prefer him not doing the remixes because most of the remixes I've heard of his Final Fantasy VII music I like better than the Final Fantasy VII music.
But don't you want to hear Honeybee in on a violin?
I do. I really like Final Fantasy VII's sound chip, though. Or like whatever
Yeah.
the midis or whatever are really. It's probably nostalgia, a big part of it, but I wouldn't want to see it. I wouldn't want it to be like the exact same music in the remake, so I would be okay with it changing. But
Yeah, and if precedent holds, I'm guessing they'll get like Takaharu Ishimoto or one of the people who often does remixes for them, like, or not remixes, arrangements. You know, like Final Fantasy IV, I think was Sekito did a lot of the rearranged music, and like Junya Nakano did a lot of the rearranged music. So that's sort of business as usual. Like Uematsu hasn't worked on any of their remakes of the classic games.
All right. Final Fantasy VII remake. We will see a 30-second trailer at E3.
One Winged Angel will be in Smash Brothers.
In the end, will
Oh.
just be.
They're
Please look
also
forward
adding
to
a
it.
Midgar stage.
uh-huh.
So Super Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog are going to get to rail each other along with Ryu and Mega Man in
So,
Midgar as
what
Odin
was-
slashes the battlefield.
Is that just that's going to be part of the battle? It's going to be one of the environmental effect of the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's separate from his final smash, which is Omnislash.
Yeah, it looks kind
Correct.
of like my guess is actually that his like magic casting thing is a taunt.
Yeah, I think it's
Because
Ooh.
it seemed kind of incongruous with what was going on in the battle.
Yeah.
yeah. I'm guessing his taunts are going to be his victory taunt from 7, the summoning effect, the magic effect, and probably one other one. And like, so it actually looks like it's going to work a lot like the Pokemon levels, where instead of Pokemon, the summons come in and hammer stuff.
Right.
And again, One Winged Angel and the Final Fantasy VII battle theme are going to be in Smash Bros.
I know I'm not tired of One Wing. Oh, that's right, I am. So
I'm
anywho,
not tired of it, but in Smash Brothers, I will make an exception.
anyways, thanks everybody for listening to episode 101. We're getting close to end of the year discussions where we're gonna have to start arguing about game of the year.
What a delicious discussion that will be.
Witcher 3.
Well, depending on the categories, but yes.
Best abs and swimmer's build.
Yes. Best use of a towel.
Yeah. I need to still play the rest of Hearts of Stone. I think I'm gonna do that for the next show. Somebody take us out, because I'm dying here.
Thank you all for listening to Random Encounter. As always, we appreciate your reviews on iTunes. If you can do that for us, it helps us get more popularity. We appear in search results, and then people can find us and listen to us, and your grandma's dog can enjoy the show as well, not just your grandma. So thank you all for listening. For Steven, for Caitlin, and for Rob, thanks, and we'll catch you next time.